Thank you. If anyone hasn't signed the register in the back of the room, we'd appreciate it if you'd do so. Roll call of the board.
Ms. Dawn?
Here.
Ms. Quintero?
But,
Ms. Hernandez?
did they give me present?
Yes, I did, thank you. Ms. Hernandez?
Present.
Mr. Jaramillo?
Present.
Mr. Crouch? Mr. Crouch?
Present. Sorry, I was reading ahead there. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. I would ask that if you make a motion tonight or a second, to state your name and the motion and the second. So is there yes, Ms. Dawn?
This is Eva Perillo-Dong. I move that we accept the agenda as submitted. Becky Quintero. Sorry.
So who did the second?
Ms. Quintero.
Ms. Quintero?
Okay.
I'm sorry, was that Ms. Quintero? Second?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Roll call.
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Ms. Hernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Jaramillo?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is governing board comments. Do any of the board members have comments at this time?
I do.
Mr. Adam, we want to wish everybody well.
Mr. Crouch?
Yes, Ms. Dawn.
This is Eva Perillo-Dong. Just want to tell everybody that I'm really hopeful that everybody stays safe and that this passes quickly, and that you and all of your families stay safe.
Ms. Quintero, do you have any comments?
Yeah, kiddo.
Thank you, Ms. Dawn.
Welcome. Stay safe.
Ms. Hernandez, do you have any comments?
Yes, Mr. Couch. I just want to thank everyone who's patient with us during this time, and especially want to thank everyone for being so flexible, from our teachers to the food service workers that just started yesterday. So a big thank you to everyone.
Did I miss anyone? I would also like to thank everyone at the district level, all the district staff, Mr. Holmes, and all the teachers, all of our support staff, for being there for our children. So, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Mr. Holmes.
Yes, members of the governing board and members who are listening in the audience. I don't have a formal report other than kind of giving an update on how we're conducting this meeting today, just so everyone is aware, and moving forward, we will continue to receive guidance. At this point, we're meeting the required standard by trying to hold as many of our meetings online or off without actually grouping together. Right now, we are still meeting the legal requirements as we've been directed to still allow for open meetings to occur. We have no call the audiences here, but we are careful that we do not have more than 10 people in this room at any given point at time. We are continuing to video stream as well, so video streaming will be available in real time, as well as kind of maintaining that proper distance. And if there's a pan of the actual boardroom, you can see how your governing board calling in helps us to maintain distance between at least the governing board president, Sandy, who's taking notes, myself, and then we have people who need to be here to actually present. Others will be either waiting outside, congregating in no more than 10, or we'll be calling in. So we'll continue to find ways in which we can be more effective in that way. But first go around, this is kind of our best effort. We will have, as people come up to the podium, we will have wipes for people to wipe down the areas so that people who are coming in new will not have to, will comply with those kind of cleaning standards that we have as well. So I just want to kind of update both the audience and general public and the governing board on what our kind of plan is moving forward as we continue to receive guidance. If there's any ways of looking at video conferences as an opportunity to actually see ourselves and maybe project to the general public. That gets a little bit more complicated, but we'll look into the legalities of that and our ability to do so technology-wise.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. This is to the governing board. I would like to have each of the governing board members hold any questions or comments you have until during a presentation, until the end of that part of the presentation. I believe the presentations will be in segments, and so Mr. Holmes will identify each of those presentation segments before they start. And then what I'll do is I'll poll each of the governing board members at the end of that segment to ask questions or make comments. Does anyone object to that?
No.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I move that we accept the consent agenda as submitted.
Thank you, Ms. Don. Is there a second? Mr. Jaramillo?
Yes, Scratch, I'd like to second motion.
Thank you, Mr. Jaramillo. Roll call?
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Ms. Hernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Jaramillo?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion passes. Next on the agenda is the Sunnyside District's response to the COVID-19. We're going to start out this section with the governing board resolution. And my plan is to go ahead and read the resolution. There's been two small changes to the resolution from the one that was posted online, and that's to change the dates from March 27th to April 10th. So I'll be reading it with those new dates in there. Sunnyside Unified School District number 12 of Pima County, Arizona. Governing Board Resolution regarding school closures. Whereas on March 15th, 2020, in order to assist in the containment of the COVID-19 virus, Arizona's governor and superintendent of public instruction ordered the closure of Arizona public schools, other than post-secondary schools, with such closures being effective immediately and continuing through at least April 10th, 2020. And whereas the Arizona legislature has recently adopted HB 2910 and SB 1693 relating to the mandated school closure and matters related thereto, and whereas the governing board and the administration of Sunnyside Unified School District intend to comply with and, to the extent reasonably possible, effectively and efficiently implement the school closure mandate and the provisions of HB 2910/SB 1693, and whereas during the period of time that district schools are subject to a closure mandate and subject to the conditions set forth in HB 2910/SB 1693, the intention of the governing board and the administration of the Sunnyside Unified School District is to have district employees remain on paid work status, with some employees being assigned to work at district facilities and other employees being assigned to work from home. And whereas during the period of time that district schools are subject to a closure mandate, to the extent reasonably possible, the district intends to continue to deliver educational opportunities to district students through distance learning, independent study, and other available methods. And whereas during the period of time that district schools are subject to a closure mandate, to the extent reasonably possible, the district intends to continue to deliver meals to qualifying district students. And whereas, in addition to the ongoing delivery of student educational opportunities and student meals to To the extent reasonably possible, the district intends to continue to provide other educational and social services that the district traditionally provides to district students, parents, and other members of the Sunnyside community. And whereas during the period of time that district schools are subject to a closure mandate, the district intends to continue to maintain its facilities and have essential operational functions remain open. Now therefore, be it resolved that by the governing board of the Sunnyside Unified School District that the superintendent of the district is authorized and directed to comply with the school closure mandate issued by the Arizona's governor and superintendent of public instruction, any subsequent school closure mandates, and the provisions of HB 2910/SB 1693. The superintendent of the district is further authorized and directed to take whatever actions the superintendent deems reasonably appropriate in order to effectively and efficiently implement the current school closure mandates, any subsequent school closure mandates, and the provisions of HB 2910/SB 1693. During the period of time that district schools are closed as a result of the current as well as any subsequent closure mandate, and the subject of the requirements set out in HB 2910/SB 1693, that district employees must each commit to being available to work during their normal working hours. District employees shall remain on paid work status during the work hours and work days that, but for the mandated closure, such employees would normally be at work. During that period of time, some district employees shall be assigned to work at district facilities, and other employees shall be assigned to work from home, with such assignments being determined by the superintendent and other district administrators and supervisors. The board finds that having district employees remain on paid work status during mandated school closures helps reduce district turnover and will best enable the district to provide educational opportunities to its students, provide meals to qualifying district students, provide other educational and social services to district students, parents, and other members of the Sunnyside community, maintain district facilities, ensure that district operational functions remain open, and promptly efficiently reopen district schools when it's appropriate to do so. Employees who are assigned to work from home shall be on call during their normal working hours, which means that such employees shall be able to be readily contacted by telephone in order to either answer questions posed to them by their supervisors or the superintendent, and or to promptly report to a district facility if requested to by a supervisor or the superintendent, and perform duties at home to the extent such duties are assigned to them by the respective supervisors or the superintendent. The superintendent is authorized and directed to take actions the superintendent believes will best allow the district to continue to provide educational and social services to district students, their parents, and other members of the Sunnyside community, including the delivery of educational opportunities to district students by means of distance learning, independent study, and or other available methods, the delivery of meals to qualifying district students, and the delivery of other educational and social services traditionally provided by the district. The superintendent is authorized and directed to continue the closure of district schools after April 10th, 2010, if such continued closure is mandated by state and or federal officials, or the superintendent at his discretion determines that continued closure is in the best interest of the district and its students. This resolution is subject to modification at any time by action taken by the board. The superintendent will promptly schedule a governing board meeting to continue modification of this resolution if the superintendent believes that such a modification is needed in order to comply with HB 2910/SB 1693, other statutory requirements or regulatory requirements, or mandates from authorized state and or excuse me, let me repeat that. I'm going to repeat that whole phrase. Comply with HB 2910/SB 1693, other statutory or regulatory requirements or mandates from authorized state and or federal officials, or maximize benefits that may be available to the district and/or its employees as a result of the state or federal legislation adopted as a result of the COVID-19 virus pandemic. The superintendent is directed to communicate with the governing board members on frequent basis concerning matters related to COVID-19 virus, school closures, and other issues addressed in this resolution. This resolution shall be interpreted in a manner consistent with the provisions of HB 2910/SB 1693. This resolution was adopted this 24th day of March 2020 by the governing board of Sunnyside Unified School District, number 12, of Pima County, Arizona. Sunnyside Unified School District, number 12 of Pima County, Arizona, by Buck Crouch, governing board, president of the governing board. Just a note, I corrected several instances of the school district being named as number 8 instead of number 12 in the document. We'll change that in the physical document itself. Do any of the board members have questions about this? Let me poll you. Ms. Hernandez?
Mr. Crouch?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Mr. Holmes, I tried to look at the website today just to get a little bit of an idea from the board meeting, what are some of the things that we have on there. But for some reason, I wasn't able to get on there. It just keeps saying on the front page that there's a closure of the school. So, maybe we could look into that. But what I'd like, other than that, what I'd like is that if it's not on there, we reference House Bill 2910 and Senate Bill 1693 quite a bit throughout the resolution here. What I'd like is if there was a link to that, to both the House Bill and the Senate Bill on our website. It might help the community also understand a little bit more about what the resolution is saying.
Mr. Holmes, can you make that happen? Yes. Mr. Holmes has said that he will make it happen.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
Now, if I can continue, well, one other thing was, if you could explain to me, Mr. Holmes, I'm sure you or Hector or someone there could explain to me a little bit more about, and for the community, a little bit more about the reason as to why we are putting together a resolution.
So yes, I can explain. The resolution authorized the governing board to actually continue to pay folks during this closure. The issues with the Senate bill and the House bill specifically is that it gives some direct direction to school districts, but the authorizing body is really the governing board. So in conversations with our legal counsel, they have advised almost all districts, if not all districts who actually work with the legal counsel, to create a resolution. This is consistent with what other districts are doing to make sure that we're in legal compliance with those two directives by the governor and our state superintendent, and more importantly, that we continue to make sure that the funding comes our way, and that as we're working with people working from home, there is no gift of public funds, that we're complying with all the legal requirements. So the reason why this is so long is that it's really covering us as a district to make sure as that we're closed, that we're not being held liable to any issues that may arise as we're trying to both provide education opportunities for students, but more importantly, as we continue to compensate our employees throughout the closure.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd like to add, this document was crafted by our legal authority.
That's right.
Any other comments from the board?
I have a question. This is Consuelo.
Yes, Consuelo.
Mr. Koch, I'm not sure who can answer this, but in the document you mentioned students have to be 18 and under. What happens if we have students that are over the age of 18? Are they allowed to still pick up the grab and go lunches? And are there any other rules that the community should know of in regards to that? So, for example, I'm thinking of families who can't take 4 or 5 kids with them when they're picking up the grab-and-go lunches. Is that allowed if they go on their own and pick up? Can you give us a little bit more detail on that?
Mr. Ames, I'm looking at the document. Can you give me a reference of where that is in the document?
I'm not looking at it right now, but I heard you mention when you were reading it that you mentioned 18 years old. So I just want to make sure what happens if we do have a student who just turned over 18. Will they be turned away? I'm happy to pull up the document, but if you have it in front of you, I did hear you say that.
Okay, I'm looking at the document right now. I don't remember reading that, and I don't see it on here.
I don't know if anyone else remembers hearing that.
This is Hector Encinas.
I remember hearing. If it's not there, then it's not a problem. But that's what I heard, and that was one of my concerns.
Mr. Encinas?
If I understand the question correctly, I think the concern is how are we ensuring that we're feeding qualifying students and continue to feed qualifying students. Is that correct?
That are 18 and over.
If they're 18 or over, basically we are following the summer feeding guidelines that we use during our summer, and basically that basically allows us to feed any student that appears to be 18 and under to be fed. We don't ask for ID. We never have, and I'll have Mr. Oakley, our food service director, expound a little bit more on that procedure.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Names, I've looked through the document several times. I don't see where there's any reference to age 18 out there.
I thought I heard you mention that. Sorry, I thought I heard that.
It's no problem, but I seriously don't see it. Mr. Holtz?
Just as Mr. Oka is coming in, we have to follow the guidelines. In other words, adults coming in cannot just pick up meals that are not children. We're not identifying people, but to be quite honest with you, and if we're going to follow the legal federal guidelines, we're not IDing people, but anyone over the age of 18 technically cannot pick up a meal, not that's provided by us.
Mr. Oakley?
Yes, good evening, President Crouch, members of the board, Superintendent Holmes. To this point, yes, the guidelines are 18 and under. You do make a good point. I understand what you're saying. During the regular school year, there might be a student that's 19 at Star, and that person is eating every day if they choose to while at Star. And to the point, we're not really assessing that age that finally when people are coming to eat to call anyone out on that. It's kind of more a good faith to feed people. That there would not be an issue with that. But yes, by the guidelines, the summer food service program, which is what we kind of revert to in this kind of situation, like Red for Ed, or when these circumstances come up, the way we're able to seamlessly flow into serving the students is with the summer guidelines, and the summer states 18 and under. But if a Star student comes to any of our lines, I can pretty much guarantee you that they're not going to be carded, if you will, and they're going to be fed in good faith.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Couch?
Yes, ma'am.
So, in answering the other question, as far as a family of 5 or something comes, and all the children have to be present?
Mr. Oakley?
Yes, we had a little bit of an issue with that the first couple of days because, again, the guidelines would state that the student has to be present to receive the meal. We did have some cars coming through, in our drive-up style where it was maybe a parent asking for 5 or 6 bags and there's no kids in the car. That was kind of, to a certain extent, unforeseen for the first day. So in good faith, we gave them what they asked for and then kind of reminded them that the students really needed to come with them the following day. And as we've taken the step to open more sites and notifications have gone out, we've made that part of the notification. to try and avoid that. But we haven't denied meals at this point for that. We're just trying to remedy it with information and being proactive on it.
Thank you.
Mr. Couch,
Yes.
there's one more, number 8 at the top of the resolution. At the very top.
Well, there's several, we'll correct all the district number 8s to district number 12s on the resolution. There's one on the header.
Yes.
There's 2 on the signature page,
Yes.
and I thought there was one more. Maybe that's it.
Mr. Crouch?
Yes. Ms. Dawn?
Yes, also in the numbering, it goes from 7 to 9.
Yes, it does.
Okay. We'll renumber that to 8 and 9.
Mr. Crouch?
Yes, Ms. Dawn?
If there are no further questions, I would like to move that we adopt the resolution with the amendments and the corrections that, well, not the amendments, but rather with the corrections that we have all stated today.
Thank you, Ms. Dawn. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Dawn? Ms.
Yes.
Dawn? Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Ms. Hernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Jaramillo?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion passes. Thank you very much. Next item is, Mr. Holmes is going to talk about what the district's doing, the district's response to COVID-19.
Okay, you got it. Mr. Baca, can I ask for your assistance in the? So, Mr. Crouch, members of the governing board that are on listening right now, as you're very aware, the update that's on the presentation itself, it's pretty outdated given the fact that everything's changed over the last week. So what I'm planning to do is give you all an update on the current situation, based upon new information that's transpired over the current week. Of course, with spring break and given our open meeting laws, we did not pull that previous presentation down, but we have another one that's ready to go and will be distributed to you. It's also being projected up for the public audience right now as we review these particular responses in current real time. A lot of these updates also, Ms. Hernandez will give you a little bit more detail on the meals, and we can go into a little bit more conversation. And Ms. Dong, a little bit more on kind of communication lines that you also alluded to in your questions regarding the resolution. So the resolution is the technical part of this. Here's kind of the more substantive, what are we doing more in detail that will give you some subsections that we'll give you an update with, and then let you ask some questions, if that's okay. Okay, I'll just start with a timeline of events, because I think this is really important. Sorry. Because this just gives you a little idea of how quick things have been moving and give the general public a idea. So on March 10th, superintendents met with, we had a meeting with Pima County Health Department on the 10th, which was a Tuesday in the afternoon, where the Pima County Health Department assured schools superintendents that they did not see any circumstances that would necessitate a school closure. So that's Tuesday the 10th. Guidance was issued for taking precautionary measures, and it was communicated to staff and parents after that meeting. And then we developed that website. That, if you're on the website now, you would see that there is a big red tag that says COVID-19 updates. And that will be a historical chronology of both the letters we sent out, coupled with what's come out with Pima County Health Department. So all that was taking place the week of the 9th, where the 10th was an actual physical meeting with superintendents, where we're giving assurances, and then we made sure we complied with kind of some of their concerns regarding how we wash hands, how we kind of try to keep some level of sanitation and what that would look like. At that point, there were no restrictions specifically given to amount of people working together. However, the precautionary measure, we as an administrative team canceled all out-of-state travel for employees and students at that time, knowing that there were just so many moving parts at different cities outside of Arizona that we didn't want people canceling their planning and then later trying to reimburse folks. So we took those measures on the week of March 9th, and then March 10th through the 12th, we really started communicating that with parents and staff around some of those concerns and around the canceled trips, and making sure that we had all the necessary supplies for washing hands, had custodians go work through that. So from the 10th to the Friday the 13th, there was presidential guidance based on CDC, who actually gave some specific guidance of meetings of more than 50 people. Our mayor also gave some city guidance. So as a result of that, we gave additional guidance to principals on the 13th of not having groups of more than 50. And as such, given that Monday was going to be a records day, we asked that those professional learning opportunities be conducted remotely. So we worked with principals in developing a plan that teachers could work from home and do their PD remotely. We created a whole series, thinking that we would, continue on with spring break on Monday, and then therefore had some different ways in which we could provide opportunities for groups that are larger than 50, and more concerns being at the high school. So that was kind of our reaction. That was from the 10th to the 13th. On Sunday, March 15th, the governor and state superintendent ordered schools to be closed until March 29th. At that point on Sunday, we directed teachers to and staff to just forego any professional development they had going, and just to ensure that teachers were going to put in their grades from home, and all other employees were told to stay home at that time until we received further guidance throughout the week. It was the day before spring break. No students were impacted that day, so we moved forward with just letting teachers do their grades, with more to come. On that Monday, given that everyone was working from home, we sent out parent and staff communications giving additional guidance that we had available for the time for what was to happen on the return of spring break. That was when we made a decision on what schools we would keep open for purposes of meals. We also let staff know who would be having to come in that particular day. At that point in time, we had directed all other classified staff to report in to work on that Monday, so that we can get basic operations without guidance from, detailed guidance from the state superintendent or governor. That was our best information at the time that we wanted to get out before everyone left for spring break, and that communication happened on that Monday. On March 18th, which was 2 days later, new guidance was given by the Department of Education regarding employees working the week of March 23rd, and this information was communicated to principals and provided to staff, where we limited then the amount of people that would come in. So we had more guidance on who we should allow to work from home if they can, and who we would allow to come work, specifically come in on the 23rd. That again was new guidance that was the precursor to the House bills that we're going to post online, that we've been referencing, the Senate and House bills that we've been referencing on the resolution. and that we'll post for people to see that specific guidance that at that time was not approved yet by our legislators or the governor. On March 18th, I'm sorry, that was on March 20th, so 2 days later, the governor and state superintendent ordered closures extended through April 10th. So again, based on that new guidance, all employees except for administrators were allowed to stay home the week of March 23rd, which is starting yesterday, and receive pay. Some employees have voluntarily come in to help us perform some of the essential functions, some such as people from IT department, some office staff, folks here in our payroll and human resources division, as well as some select school staff that were just helping to get things ready for this week, knowing that the guidance allowed everyone to stay home this week and still be compensated for that. So that's, I felt like it was necessary to give you that timeline because as you can see from March 10th, when we're being told that there's no chance we're going to be closing schools, to March 20th, 10 days later, you can see a drastic shift in public policy related to this, and then more importantly, us having to communicate almost every other day new information to staff and parents regarding what the direction is. So that's, I just want to give a timeline of events to brings us forward to kind of where we're at now and what's going to happen next week.
Mr. Holmes, at this time, I'd like to poll the board to see if there's any questions.
Okay.
I'd like to poll the board members to find out if there's any questions or comments they want to make. Ms. Dong? Ms. Dong, do you have any questions? Mr. Jaramillo?
Not at this time.
Mr. Jaramillo?
I have none.
Ms. Quintero?
Not at this time, thank you.
Ms. Hernandez?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Please continue, Mr. Holmes.
Yes, so the next two kind of slides are kind of information that's going to tell, give you an update on what does this mean now moving forward in terms of just employees. So I want to make sure go on record to say school closures, and this comes from our state superintendent for public instruction. School closure is not a complete shutdown of school operations and instructional obligations to students. During school closures, staff are still expected to engage in work-related activities, and students and families are expected to meet the instruction requirements of their teachers in schools. That means that employees, starting next week, employees regardless of job classification who can perform meaningful job-related functions from home would be allowed to do so through the closures. However, we are expected to continue to provide education opportunities for students during the school closures and maintain essential operation functions. As such, employees that are working from home may be asked, just to make sure it's clear, may be asked by their supervisor to report physically to work under these circumstances to provide the required services to students, parents, and staff. So I just want to make sure it's real clear to the governing board. We may ask employees that are working from home to periodically come in if we need them here to perform some duties that are essential to make sure students are getting educated and that we're maintaining our essential operational functions. That doesn't mean people will have to be here the full day, but it could mean, the principal asks the office manager to come in on, in the morning to help them arrange packets and those types of things. That being said, before we kind of take questions, House Bill 2019 provides us with some additional guidance in relationship to what I have just stated earlier. It's really, and I'm going to read these three guidances for everyone because it's going to make things a lot clearer. The requirement under House Bill 2019 requires each public school to continue to pay all of its employees for the duration of the statewide closure, subject to the following. So I want to make sure this is important. Before March 30th, 2020, that's the week we're in now, each public school employee must commit to be available to work during the employer's normal work hours. That commitment, as provided by our legal counsel, is a letter is going to go out to all staff this week that has to be signed and returned. showing that they're committed to be available to work during the normal work hours. If they do not sign that letter of commitment, they cannot continue to be paid according to this guidance. I just want to make sure that's real clear. We'll monitor, make sure that we collect them all, but every single employee must commit to be available during work hours as a one requirement of this ability to pay them. In addition, if the employee can work remotely, the employee must work remotely beginning March 30th through the duration of statewide closures. So we have made those accommodations already this week, and will continue to do so for those that can continue to do their work remotely. The third one is really the most important one for our governing board to understand as we're communicating to staff. If the employee cannot work remotely, the public school must reassign the employee to other tasks that the employee can perform, and the employee must perform those tasks beginning March 30th through the duration of statewide closures. This means that we will have staff that cannot do their duties from home, such as custodians, maintenance staff, security staff, our grounds crew, transportation staff like bus drivers, some MCT and technicians that we're going to need to run the district, some of our health clerks, instructional aides, professional care assistants, parapros, SPED, and interventionists are going to be asked to come in so they can perform these basic functions to keep the district running. And more importantly, many of these positions do not have tasks that are related to their job that they can perform from home. Based on this guidance, we will be asking these employees to return to work on the 30th, along with, as I stated earlier, other employees that are working from home may be asked to come in to perform certain duties as needed, just to continue to educate our students and continue to keep this district running. I'll stop there for questions.
Mr. Holmes, I have a comment. On our website, we have this block that comes up as soon as you go into the website now. It says SUSD school closure update. Schools remain closed through April 10th. If you have questions, please contact your school's front office, and it gives the same message as English. The first blush, when you first see that, the indication is that we are closed for business altogether. And I'm wondering if we can phrase that differently, or is there some requirement that we have to put that on there under state law?
No, there's no requirement. We can phrase it differently. I think it was a way to just simply put that out there so folks that do not have an understanding that we're actually closed during that time. We've done I feel like a pretty good job of communicating to our staff where these details really matter. But that was really meant for general public to know. All the details, I think, have been done offline, quite frankly, but we can modify that in a way that brings some clarity. I think I'll have to kind of think it through with our public relations department.
Yeah, my concern is that we intend to still be delivering instruction to our students. And this implies to me that we're closed for business altogether, and I'd like to get softened a bit, I guess.
Okay.
Comments from the rest of the governing board. Ms. Dawn?
Yes, it's just one little quick thing, actually, with what you were talking about, that there was some glitch earlier this afternoon on that website when I went to try to get into it on the computer. It just showed that page that Mr. Crouch is referencing, and it didn't let me get past that page. I'm not sure if the glitch has been fixed.
I'm on it right now, and there's a little tab that allows me to push close, and it's working right now.
Okay, yeah, I would push close and nothing. Okay, so I'm glad it's working. All right, thank you. That's all.
Okay.
Mr. Alamil?
No, I have no comment at this time. Thank you.
Ms. Quintero?
I do have a question, but I think I'm going to hold on to that until we get to the student,
All right.
Okay.
Ms. Hernandez?
I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. Continue, Mr. Holmes.
Okay, so the next sections we will do in this order so that we can have questions are going to be food service, human resources, payroll and finance, parent and student communication, curriculum and instruction, technology and internet access, and health and wellness. So I'm going to have folks come up in each of those areas, starting with food service. Some of those questions were asked earlier, specifically on the there as it related to the resolution, but this will give you just an update of what sites are open, what do we plan to open, where we're going with all this, and then update on how many students have been fed up daily at the last couple of days, and then just kind of just a little bit of the guidelines that Mr. Oakley reviewed earlier. So I'll have him come up, Mr. Oakley, and if you can speak to the slide, the next slide, which is sorry, I'm trying to do it at the same time. Just which are open. We'll start with sites open. If you can just present this slide, and then if you guys can ask questions after he's complete.
Sounds good.
Okay, sure. So good evening, President Crouch, members of the board, Superintendent Holmes. So when the closure was announced, our first step was to get some schools immediately planned to be up and running. And initially, we went with the same ones that we opened for Red for Ed, which were kind of geographically spaced across the district. You see those there, Craycroft, Los Amigos, Drexel, Elvira, and Mission Manor. That was kind of wave one in our initial plan. I think over spring break, as more information came out, excuse me, there was concern that, we needed to maybe reach more kids than we did in the past and add some sites. So Mr. Holmes contacted me and we wanted to add Summit View. So over spring break, we got that one ready to go on Monday. Monday, first day back, we had an additional meeting where it was determined that we wanted to, again, offer food at more sites. So we decided to add the 4 more, which are going to be open starting tomorrow, those being Los Niños, Rivera, Palo, and Santa Clara. So we'll be up to 10 sites. And in addition to that, discussion was had to have kind of the bus routes and mobile routes out there to maybe kind of fill in some of the highly concentrated routes that are maybe in a pocket that is just maybe not close enough to even one of those 10. So I'm working with the transportation department on that, and we are looking to identify what those spots will be, and we're going to add those to those service areas coming next Monday. How that's going to look is transportation actually got some bus drivers in volunteering that have worked with us the last couple of days, and we're going to have the meals ready at a site, and a couple of bus drivers are going to come and pick that up. They've done their training on the paperwork and stuff and how that's handled, so we make sure we get proper reimbursement. And in the next couple of days, we're going to identify what those routes look like, and those 2 will be up as of next Monday. So that's where we're at as far as sites and plans to just try and really have a lot of outreach. We also have on the slide kind of where we are as far as numbers of meals. 887 students yesterday, keeping in mind the guidelines were loosened. Normally, like over the summer, we're open for the day. There's a breakfast, then a lunch, more in a traditional school day. Now, it's all about coming, getting everything you can, and getting on your way to what, with the current thing. So when you see 887, that's actually double that for how many meals went out, because everyone's getting a breakfast and lunch at the same time. So like today went up to 1257, so we're at 2,500. So we're starting to grow a little bit, and the hope is we'll continue to grow and with the extra sites and not cannibalize. So that's where we are on the meals and the transport. And there were some questions earlier. The way we're able to do this is it's kind of an extension of the summer program. We go into this program that is not our traditional as far as reimbursement. We have to get approval through the ADE to operate now that school is closed. And those are the guidelines we discussed earlier. Anyone 18 and under, no questions asked. We had the question earlier. We're not really questioning anyone, and staying within those guidelines, doing all the same paperwork and meal services. The only thing I would say about the meal service, I don't know if any of you have been out or seen it, is right now we're trying to stick to prepackaged items, just the perception of it, less handling of the food. Everyone's wearing gloves. Going to try and maintain that as long as I can. As I look, other school districts probably doing the same kind of thing. I'm worried about over the long haul how the supply of that is going to be affected. But we have plenty of surplus items here on hand. I'm not worried about being able to continue to serve food at all, just maybe the packaging and the way we're doing it.
Mr. Holmes?
I just want to add that right now, the way the meals are being delivered, there's also distance between if those are getting down. We're trying to operate as much as a drive-through as possible because we're finding more and more parents actually driving up versus actually walking. Therefore, that leads me to believe that the bus routes would be helpful in people that may not be able to walk. And so they don't have to get out of their cars. They're walking the 2 bags to the bar, how many they need, to the car, roll down their window, just like you're going through a drive-through at a fast food, and they're getting those bags that way just to kind of prohibit kind of contact with folks and following those guidelines with gloves wearing and distancing as well.
Mr. Oakley, could you provide the board with a couple sample menus of breakfast and lunches, and also maybe some pictures of them so we get the visual
Sure, no
impact
problem.
of what's going into them, just so we have some sense of what's happening in them.
Sure, absolutely.
Ms. Dong, do you have any comments or questions?
Just a quick comment, Mr. Oakley. I think you're doing an incredible job thinking outside of the box to make sure that we address our community and the population that we serve. So I'm really appreciative of everything that you're doing and using the buses and going to all the different sites. Thank you so very much. I'm very appreciative.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. O'Meal?
Yes, I would like to also thank the food service for what they're doing as well and taking care of all of the students' needs as far as lunch is going, breakfast. But what I don't see the times that they're being served on this.
The time of service is from 7:30 to 10.
Okay. So the breakfast, I start at 7:30. Is there a break in between that they can go back and get their lunch, or are they both being given at the same time?
Yes, they're given at the same time. That's why there's a little bit of a tighter window. So if they show up any time in that time period, they're getting both breakfast and lunch. They're getting 2 meals.
Okay. Understood. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Not at this time, but I do want to thank Mr. Oakley and making sure that we have enough supplies for the gloves and things so that we don't run out of that stuff.
Ms. Hernandez?
Yep, I will piggyback off of that. Thank you, Mr. Oakley, for your leadership. And if, I'm not sure who's able to send this to us, but whenever we get the bus routes up and going, if that can be communicated with us, so we can help spread the message to our community.
Okay, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oakley.
Okay, thank
The
you.
board does appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
I'm going to have Dr. Bergman speak to Human Resources, just some questions on, in general, like our contracts, what are we doing with hiring, what's kind of the work from home commitments, what does that look like, and then a little bit of supplemental pay that she'll speak to, and then Mr. Encinas will talk a little bit more about supplemental pay during this time of paying people from working from home. What does that supplemental look like? So, Dr. Bergman.
Good evening, President Crouch, members of the board, Superintendent Holmes, and the audience that we have this evening. I want to start off with contracts. As you know, our 2021 contracts were electronically sent March 2nd to every current employee who is returning next year. They are due back Friday, March 27th at 11:59. If an individual hasn't signed their contract by that time, it becomes null and void and automatically disappears from the individual's view. It doesn't go away in the system. And we have to bring those individuals back to the board and move them through as a null and void. If they forget or if they didn't get to it, they notice their principal about it, the principal lets us know, and we can reissue a contract if an individual does not make that deadline. But currently, Ms. Emsley, the HR director, went in yesterday afternoon and did an update of where we're at with our return contracts. Every principal was given this information late in the afternoon yesterday, and currently 93% of our bus drivers have returned their contracts, 90% of our classified employees have returned their contracts, the professional on teaching 86%, our substitutes 30%, teachers 79%, for a total of 80% of all of our employees in return. So I think we're looking pretty good. I also ran every site, and Ms. Gallegos and the directors sent emails to the principal identifying who they needed to call and contact and get a gentle reminder to the individuals who have not. And with the things that are going on and what's happening right now, it's especially if you're a teacher home with your 3 children, trying to keep them busy and then planning for what it is you're going to do with your classroom, their contracts can be easily forgotten. So we're working very diligently to ensure that all of them have reminders. The second area I want to talk about is hiring. Tonight you approved the agenda for new hires that we're going to move forward with and issue contracts tomorrow. The HR specialists will be issuing those to our new employees. Even though they won't come in for an orientation right now, we do want to issue their contract to make sure they have it, they sign it, and they're committed to working for us next year. That's going to happen after every board meeting for any new hires. We've asked principals to continuing the hire process. Even if they do it virtually, they can use Google Hangouts and do their interviewing through Google Hangouts and be within the social distance. Their interview team, as well as the principal and the interviewee, can go through that process. So we're hoping that they continue their hiring and they continue to send in their recommendations so that we can move them forward between this board meeting and the next board meeting, which is scheduled for April 14th. So we're going to continue that. The application specialist is also moving applications as quickly as she can. She's doing that virtually from home so that applicants are being moved to principals as fast as possible. And once recommendations are done, that information is easily accessible to the HR specialist who can pull it and move forward as well. So we're very committed to ensure that that process does not slow down. Working home. One of the things that Ms. Emsley and I did over spring break when we found out that that our employees could work remotely this week is we built a plan on how this would work for HR and benefits. We did a Google Hangout with all the employees from benefits and HR on last Friday. We had all but 3 who joined us, which was great. I have to admit my staff is very enthusiastic and has been very open to learning what it is they need to do to learn how to work remotely. We have an 8:30 check-in where tasks are distributed to the HR specialists and what it is that we want to see accomplished. We have a 9:30 with the benefits department, and then we have a 1:30 check in the afternoon where they can ask us questions, and it's all done virtually through Google Hangouts, where they can ask questions if they're seeking an answer because they're in communication with employees. And so that's that time at 1:30 that Ms. Emsley and myself are giving them feedback, where they can go, what answer they can give to their employees, and how they can move forward. And we're in day 2 of it, and I felt pretty good today at our 1:30 meeting that things were working productively. The other thing is Mr. Holmes asked us to push out some information for our employee assistance program, because this is a program that's free for our employees, but offers a great deal of assistance to our employees, especially counseling at this time, if they're feeling anxious, if they want to talk to somebody about how they're feeling. It's a free benefit for themselves as well as their family members. So that went out today, along with a video talking about how can you stay calm? What strategies can you use to assist yourself in this process? We're going to also send out additional information that we're getting from CBiz, our supporter in our benefits, on how, tips for working at home, tips for working at home with children, tips to stay active while you're housebound, to give them, and it's filled with links that they can go for free exercising, ways to support their children at home, and to deal with the mental issues that they may be surrounded with right now. Mr. Holmes also commented about supplemental pay, because this was a question that our employees are having, and I'll use the lead coaches for the high schools. Right now, athletics has been halted, but our lead coaches will continue to be paid their stipend, because most of them work 12 months. They work with their teams, they're adjusting handbooks. There are things that they can do between now and when we get back for their stipends to continue. Lead learners and mentors will continue to do their tasks electronically and work with curriculum instruction. And our teachers' cadres also have the option to work remotely.
Mr. Holmes?
Just to add, this isn't an exhausted list. We just want to give samples to the governing
Yeah.
board of what a supplemental pay would look like. Teachers are doing Weekend Academy, which is helping students make up credits so they can graduate. They will continue to do that remotely so that we don't put a stop to that. So that's another example. So we are looking case by case at supplemental pay, and in places where it makes sense that we can still do those tasks remotely, we will go ahead and do so. The head coach was a little bit out of the norm on that, but we had a conversation this morning around, this is specifically to our high school head coach. The season has already started. I can tell you head coaches work all year. Just because they actually are in season right now, I didn't want to jeopardize. Any assistant coaches will be paid prorated what they've worked up until now. But middle school athletics for the fourth quarter is what's going to start today. Those addendas will not be paid because we don't anticipate having any sports between now and the end of the year, at least at the middle school. So just give you an example what we're paying, an example why we're not paying a certain addenda, because those were just approved tonight, but there's no sports starting today. They have not begun like the high schools have. So I just want to give you some examples. Thank you, Dr. Bergman, just for doing that and sending out that information to our employees who at this point in time may need some support dealing with all the, the situation that they may be facing right now or their worries. And so I thought that was important as well. So thank you.
Questions? Yeah, I know. I'm waiting.
No, I just had a question about the new employee orientation.
Well, typically, every Thursday, we have a new employee orientation where they come into the boardroom. We take them through several videos that are mandatory and educating them about it. They sign paperwork. But one of the things that we're doing is everything is being loaded onto application, and they're going to start doing it electronically. And so we're we're going to do it. In fact, that just got completed today by Ms. Lopez. All those forms are now in the system, and then the HR specialists just pull them and send them right to the new applicant. They fill them all out there. They send them automatically back. And we just won't sit down and talk to them like we have before. They will get the training eventually, but all those videos are also going to be attached as well.
You could also do a Google Hangout with them.
Oh, yes, we can. We could do a Google Hangout.
Ms. Dong, do you have any questions or comments?
Not at this time.
Mr. Halamil,
No, I just want to say thank you.
Ms. Quintero.
Also, thank you for jumping through hoops to make sure all this gets done.
Ms. Hernandez?
Yes, thank you as well. And I do have a question. Dr. Bergman, do we have a portal of some sort where we have frequently asked questions on there? Because I think during this time there might be a lot of, like you said, folks who are anxious. And I just want to make sure that if they weren't able to join a call or reach out directly, that they can find some of the frequently asked questions and answers somewhere?
Yes, the Benefits Department has their own email that we have sent out, and individuals know. We have tagged all our phones with the same remarks, and we give the email address if they can't get a hold of one of us, and they can use that email address for HR or for benefits to ask specific questions. And then the next day, the HR specialists, the benefits specialists, the analysts, any employee, wherever it went, pulls it up and then gets back to them either by making a phone call to them or sending them an email so their question is answered within a 24-hour span.
Thank you. That's great. But I think I'm a little bit confused. So do we have somewhere where frequently asked questions can be located?
Are you referring to like on the website if the employees have for like a?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, not for employees at this time. I know we are building one for our parents. But I think in time we will probably get one up for our employees as well.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Encinas is up.
We're going to now move into payroll and finance, just some updates on what's happening for right now for payments specifically and kind of timesheets moving forward.
Thank you, President Crouch, board members, Superintendent Holmes. First of all, I'd like to reassure the governing board that a top priority for the district, the superintendent, and the Department of Business and Finance was to ensure that, first, our employees continue to get paid, and second, that our vendors also continue to get paid. So I can assure the governing board that thanks to the dedicated staff that we are blessed with, we have taken steps to ensure that payday will take place this Friday. We will not be waiting for timesheets or signatures for individuals to send a timesheet and hold payment. Basically, the payroll department has been asked and directed to process payroll for this coming Friday based on contracted hours that the employee received at the beginning of the year, plus any supplemental pay timesheets that we've received as of today. So if we had supplemental pay of an employee who worked beyond his normal hours, or a normal job, and had supplemental hours that were turned into payroll, by today, they'll be paid on Friday. Second, as far as vendors, invoices received from vendors as of today will be processed and payment will be mailed out by Friday. Like I said, timesheets are in terms of requiring signed timesheets, that's being waived at this point, this week, right? And the paychecks for this Friday will reflect the contracted hours. This week's paycheck, this Friday's paycheck, is for services that were rendered between March 8th and March 21st, and that included spring break of last week. So in essence, the paycheck that folks will be paid this coming Friday, our employees, will be the week of March 8th through the 21st. The 21st, is that a Saturday? That was Saturday, Sunday. The 20th is the last actual Friday payday, which is that last Friday of the spring break. So actually last week was spring break, and those employees will be paid for spring break that qualify for being paid for spring break, because not all of our employees are paid the 4 days of spring break. They're not all and that's based on the contracts that were issued, the contract length. Some do not get this, all 4 days of spring break paid, but they'll be paid what have been paid in the past in regards to spring break. The other thing, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this payday also reflects holiday for insurance. No health insurance deductions will be taken off on this Friday's payday. So in essence, those employees that aren't getting paid the spring break will receive a lesser impact on their reduced paycheck because there won't be any health insurance deductions on this paycheck.
The premium holiday, yes.
Yes, so that's a good thing. Any questions regarding pay? Okay. Refund for activities, I think one of the concerns people would have is, am I going to get a refund for having paid a fee for athletics to have my child participate in a sport? And the answer to that is no, and it's not our decision, it's a Department of Revenue, Arizona Department of Revenue's decision, in that tax credit donation was made non-refundable, realizing that the individual making the donation will get that tax credit back via their filing of state income tax. So they'll be refunded that fee through the state tax return filing. And as far as supplemental pay, district is following ADE guidelines as it pertains to federal and state grants. Last comment I would like to make is the fact that my office staff has worked tremendously to make sure that we continue with the business operations of the district in regards to accounts payable, payroll, purchasing, and warehouse. The phones have been either forwarded to their own personal cell phones or answered with a voicemail saying, if you need to get a hold of me, please contact me via email at ... susd.org. And all those employees that are working from home are required and are expected to be working and looking at the email during normal work hours. So, okay.
I had a couple questions. One is any employees that had taken PTO, say for that last Monday, they were paid as if it was PTO time?
No, sir. My understanding of last Monday, which is the 16th of March, it was a whole harmless day. So if you called in PTO, since it
wasn't taken off PTO.
it will not be charged to PTO. If a person had called in for PTO this week, okay, and made arrangement for PTO, they will not be charged PTO.
Okay.
So we'll make those adjustments afterwards.
And the other comment or question was on timesheets. For people that are working at home, are we working on a mechanism so they can do timesheets from home?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so the answer was yes on that.
I'll just elaborate, and Mr. Baca can. Right now, we're not doing timesheets since we're paying everyone for working. Next week, we'll implement the same time sheet type time track system that we have, but it will be done remotely for those that are working remotely, and then here for those that are coming in. That's going to apply only to those that are using time track for purposes of accounting for their hours now. Any certified employer, folks that don't use that as a traditional, their accountability system is going to be based upon the tasks they're asked to do, and they're reporting back to the supervisor.
Thank you. Ms. Miller, do you have any questions?
Mr. Crouch,
Yes, Ms. Dahl.
this is Consuelo. I have a quick question. Do we have a plan in place where if for whatever reason some of the employees can't pick up checks, are they all being mailed at this point for those that don't have direct deposit? I just know that in some states when they have complete lockdowns, or they've had complete lockdowns, this has been an issue, so I just want to make sure we have something in place for that.
Fortunately for the district, 99.9% of our employees have direct deposit. I think last pay period we only had one individual that did not have direct deposit and was constantly reminded that this will be the last time we give you a hard check, but he kept refusing to. I think we finally got the last person to get a direct deposit. We made arrangements with them to get, if they don't have a bank card or a checking account with a bank, we've directed them to go either to Walmart and get a debit card where we can deposit money into a debit card. So we've got that route. So as far as paper checks, hard checks for employees, virtually non-existent right now.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Stong, did you have any questions?
Just a clarification. It says refund for activities. I was confused about the two different sentences there. One of them says all fees paid through tax credit donations are not refundable due to Arizona government, which is understandable. What does it mean the donees are receiving their donation refunded?
Basically, if I, let me just make an example. If I have a child that is going to play high school baseball, and I don't know what the fee is, $150?
Yes, it doesn't matter.
Okay, say it's $150, and I pay that $150 donation or tax fee to the school as a tax credit. I designated, here's my tax credit donation, $150 to pay for my son's baseball fee. We give that individual a tax credit receipt. Now that individual, when filing their tax return, will then claim on their tax return that they have a $150 tax credit paid.
Just can I jump in?
Sure.
I think there's confusion. Ms. Dong, I know what you're reading because I'm reading the same thing. I think the intent of that statement right there, the donees are receiving, is that they're going to be receiving it on their state income tax refund. So in other words, no one's getting a refund if they made a tax credit donation.
From the district.
Yeah, the first sentence I understood. The first, it was the second one that was confusing.
It sounds confused. It sounds like we're going to refund donees, but it really is more an elaboration of the first sentence, that they will be refunded on based on tax credits.
And I think we should have just, in that
Okay,
sense,
thank you. And, thank you for the confusion.
the donees are receiving their donation refunded by the state.
That's right.
By the state.
It could have been my cut and paste, so.
Mr. Hamil, do you have any questions? Mr. Hamil, do you have any questions?
No, just thank Mr. Encinas and his staff.
Thank you.
Ms. Quintero, do you have any questions?
Not at this time.
Mr. Hernandez, do you have any other questions?
I don't, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Encinas.
Just one last comment, as far as the next payday, which is April 10th, which is the day that this closure is supposed to be lifted, we're already prepared to have the payroll process for April 10th, which is a holiday for us, so we'll have to be doing it by the 9th, which is that Thursday. So just to show the governing board payroll is working on the next payroll.
Okay. I'm going to have Ms. Gallegos come up. We're going to talk about parent and student communication, just kind of what we're doing now. As you know, we've been using all our vehicles, such as Facebook and others, to actually make sure parents are aware. I think we can bring some clarity, as suggested, on the closure language, so that there's not confusion around that. But I want to speak to how we're communicating right now with parents and students. I think this is one that we can always do better. So please don't take this as this is all we're doing. I think this is just an update of what's pressing now for communication with parents and students, not an exhaustive list of what we're going to do moving forward. Okay, just I want to preface that. And I'll let Ms. Gallegos speak to what we're doing right now over the last couple days.
Good evening, Mr. Crouch, board members. So our priority for these first 2 days, yesterday and today, was to have all teachers at all schools contact their parents and their students. And they have been keeping track of who they have contacted and who they have not. The other priority is for them to communicate and ask what is the preferred method of communication. As of yesterday, we had about 1/3 of our student population that teachers had not been able to communicate with. They have continued their efforts. Today, we actually cut the numbers down by almost half. So where yesterday we had about 5,017 students that had not been reached, today, I'm still waiting for 2 schools, we have about 3,292. In fact, I had a teacher just email me at 6 o'clock asking me to reduce the number of her school. Her school had gone from 200 to 109 today, and she very happily emailed me because her principal is copying her saying, we have one less, change the number to 109, because she got a hold of this evening of 1 student. And that's why those 2 schools haven't sent me their numbers, because they continue to call parents even in the evening, which is really great to see. each teacher is keeping track of their students and who they have made contact with. K-8 teachers are also asking parents what their preferred method of communication. Some parents prefer text, others have asked for packets or hard copies of the work. Others are using Dojo, which many of our schools have used before, and parents are used to that. So they really want to make sure that they use the method that parents and students feel more comfortable with. Mr. Baca has also sent out a parent needs survey to identify internet and food support needs. We are close to about 2,000 responses, and they keep coming in. Andrea Foster and her team will be following up with parents beginning tomorrow because they have asked some very specific questions regarding resources, internet providers and services. And so that's what we have done today. Many of our teachers who have made contact have already assigned work to students. Our schools have also printed packets, and parents are picking those up. And we will continue on our efforts to do that. Are there any questions?
I don't have any at this time. Are there any other questions from the board? Ms. Dawn?
So it seems like we're doing well in getting more and more of our students and teachers connected to one another, and it seems like the numbers are going down as far as not being able to connect with the students. So I'm really glad to hear that. I think I'll wait till curriculum to ask some other questions about some of the things going on with the students, but I'm glad to hear that there's more and more communication now with the parents and students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jaramillo?
I would just like to say thank you as well for your efforts in trying to get the message out.
Ms. Quintero?
Do we have any kids that are stuck in Mexico?
You know, I haven't heard that. What I have heard, actually, because I called all of our principals today just to talk to them, see what they're hearing, is that we have some families who have sent their children back to Mexico so that they can stay with families. Not a lot, but I would say I heard of about 3 families that have done that.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that eventually they can come back.
Yes. Actually, it's the opposite. We have parents sending them there, which is interesting.
Ms. Hernandez?
Yes, Ms. Gallegos, I just have a question in regards to connectivity. Do we have any hotspots? Maybe this might be for IT, but
Yes.
do we have any hotspots available for our community?
Yes, Mr.
regards
Baca,
to
in his
internet?
presentation, will explain to you exactly where we have hotspots and connectivity. So he will be talking to you about that. He's the expert. Any other questions?
I just had a comment. One of my concerns earlier when I was talking to Mr. Holmes was that our communication, I had a sense that a lot of our communication is unidirectional, just out to people. I'm really glad to see that we're doing a lot of the bilateral or communication, that we're getting responses back and really closing that loop. So thank you very much. Mr. Holmes?
Yeah, and I think as you looked at my earlier kind of timeline of events, the whirlwind of the week and a half, it was, I think what's become clearer to us is the best method for us to really get information out is really school by school. And so our task has been more challenged by that because we have to make sure the message is more consistent. But we're finding that it's, we're having a greater impact with that two-way type of conversation when it's being communicated by the principal to staff who then is delivering the message. Now, there's a little bit more of a what was that, telephone, the effect, right, telephone game effect when that happens, but it does increase our ability to have two-way communication, because as much as sometimes we want to control the message from a district perspective, it doesn't lend itself to all these responses that I think are necessary. So I think that goes also, I think, to Ms. Hernandez's point around a website for teachers. What we're finding, Ms. Hernandez, to the same point, is that trying to use our principals as a better vehicle for those frequently asked questions, particularly as it relates to also HR and those issues. So we're finding tighter ways of communicating with principals and checking for their understanding. so that that message is getting more clearly communicated to folks. And we're finding that it's having a really better impact, at least in this age of a little bit chaos, right, for that to occur. So I just want to make sure that that addresses a little bit of what I think Ms. Hernandez was alluding to, and then Mr. Crouch, your idea of really how do we really get that word out to folks that really have a need. And we're really pushing more of a site-based communication plan than a district office communication plan during these times.
And one other thing that I forgot to mention is some of our administrators and teachers are getting very creative, and they want to let students know that they miss them. So I have been watching on Facebook how they are posting YouTube videos with some of the songs that they sing in the morning, or just telling kids, hey, we miss you, do your work at home. So I think that we have some creativity going on in terms of letting kids know that we miss them. Thank you.
Sounds really good, thank you.
We have now Pam Benton, so she's going to talk about curriculum instruction, and then followed by Mr. Baca, who will talk more about technology and internet access and what we're doing there. They're kind of blend a little bit, so that's why I want her to talk about what guidelines we're setting and then how we're making sure things are accessible to students.
Good evening, President Crouch, Governing Board members, Superintendent Holmes. Also, we're trading out with Mr. Encinas and people to have Maggie Hackett and Carmen Castro are also in the room now, so they can answer questions as they come forward.
We're trading people out so that we don't get more than 10, so we're asking some folks to leave as others come in, just so, because you're not here to see it, so I just want to make sure for both the audience and our Governing Board members who are on the phone to know kind of how we're navigating this less than 10 rule.
We have them in a tag team situation there. So I want to, no, we're not far away tag, virtual tag. So the curriculum and instruction pieces that we're going to touch on are ever-changing as much as Mr. Holmes' timeline. It's something that we're working to tweak and really tighten as we move forward, and we're looking to have a little more guidance by the end of the week as we move out of this first week of really sort of getting into the hang of remote learning. So what you see in the for teacher guidelines, what we're really doing is putting together parameters. We do not have an expectation that everybody's going to continue with the pacing calendar and the assignments as they are, and everybody's going to do exactly the same thing. What we are trying to do, though, is to really develop some district sort of models of curriculum supports. We've done that. I have to say, both Carmen and Maggie did a phenomenal job, as well as Frank McCormick for social studies, on getting some resources out to teachers to help them begin that process. We're really leveraging what's familiar. We're using the district resources, our primary sources, as much as we can, because those are things that are familiar both to teachers and to students. There is a lot of free things that are being out there that are fine for parents to fill extra time with and do on the weekends and some of those pieces. But what we are taking serious is making sure that our kids have the best educational opportunity we could possibly provide during this time. It's critical for our kids. So we take that very seriously. So really using those district resources over free resources with the providing sort of these frameworks, and the teachers are so creative about putting them together the way their team or their site works. But we're also looking for some of that consistency so that the support that we can provide, particularly for our exceptional ed students, and Dr. Williams is going to speak in a little bit about what we're doing there. But what's really important is, as we move forward with general ed, that we have to be able to modify and meet the needs of our exceptional ed students at the same time. And including in there is also our gifted students. And so Dr. Williams is going to talk a little bit more about that. But part of our why of creating some consistency as a district is that it better enables us to provide continuous services for our kids in the best way that we can do that moving forward. Because our students are very comfortable in a digital space in 4 through 12. That's been a little bit easier shift for us than some of our neighboring districts around that have that. Many of our teachers are also familiar with Google Classrooms, some of those resources. So those are some commonalities that our kids are comfortable in, and that we're also helping teachers who are not to be more comfortable in that place. We know K3, third graders, we do have laptops, but we don't have cases, so we don't send them home. We haven't all year. We talked about that for a bit today. We've decided at this point we're going to not. We may adjust that as we move forward. This is the first year. It's been 2-to-1 up until this year. This year we used some additional funding from or that we were able to get third grade. So when we're really looking at K3, we spent most of the day today really talking through and looking through what do we do to support K3 when the students don't have a device. What we're really landing on, and more guidance is going to come out about that, is some access to parents that is digital, because they have other kids in the home that have them. Many parents have access, and we're getting that information through both the surveys and the parent contact. But in the cases where they don't, and in the cases where kinders are doing the work, there are activities or printed activities or different ways that they could do that. So we're aware that not everything can be done in that online space, and are working to really be creative on what that is going to look like.
Mr. Holmes?
I just want to add to this, because I just, what we have that's unique to our district that I'm not seeing across the board is that our curriculum can be delivered online. And that's not the case when I'm seeing people putting all these activities and other resources. We're talking not, I just want to make sure I'm clear, we're not talking about links to activities that kids can do based on Khan Academy and all those things. What we're committed to doing in our remote learning experience over the time of closures is they have access to the curriculum that they use every day that they're used to using, so that teachers aren't trying to find additional resources. They're just trying to find ways in which they give those access to their students. So that is definitely different than what you're seeing out there, and I think it's a better way of doing our work moving forward, because it's continuing our educational efforts in the way that we've always delivered them. At the 412 level, I just got to be real clear, I still anticipate that 80% of our families are going to have internet access, based upon what information we're getting both in the surveys. That means that roughly about 3,000 of our students probably will not have internet access, right? So it's unrealistic for us to purchase 3,000 hotspots for folks. So at the 412 level, we are also getting really creative, and this is where the tightness comes. We're getting teacher input as we're getting this, because teachers want input on this, but I think where the tightness occurs is we're going to have to make sure that the platform by which students are accessing the curriculum. Right now, Learn has been it, but it doesn't provide all the communication devices. That's why we're asking people to navigate more towards, or gravitate more towards, Google Classroom, because on Google Classroom you can communicate through that system already that's established, and you can actually create offline resources that students can actually download if they get to a hotspot. So that's the approach we're looking for students who don't have internet, is really finding ways that we can get to the hotspots. And so one way that we're going to be able to do that is as we're delivering lunches remotely through our buses. So if once we get this operation, our buses have Wi-Fi, as you know. So students who are picking up their lunch and breakfast and lunch at the bus will leave it parked. So students that don't have internet access can walk to the bus, download their assignments for the week, and that's where it gets tricky. We're hoping we can at least get weekly assignments, not daily. And if they're going daily, they can check their emails, they can do those things, but we want to make sure that whatever we're assigning, at least 4 through 12, is also downloadable onto their device, so that they actually do the work remotely from home. So they don't need internet all day. They just need to be able to download it, do their work, and then upload it once they go back to the bus. We are keeping our schools as hotspots as well. So if they want to walk to the perimeter, Mr. Baca is expanding that internet access by giving a boost signal that will give a little bit more there. So I think a combination of that, it's imperfect, A combination of the boosting the signal and using the buses as access points will give students the ability to actually download work. They don't need internet 24/7 to do the work that we're asking them to do. They're used to the curriculum, they're used to the devices, they just need an access point to download the work and upload the work. And so that's a little bit of a different challenge than other districts have. What we're doing with the K-3 specific, they don't have devices, as we know. So those are areas that we are going to really probably have to print packets that we're going to have to distribute for students or give some links, because not all of our families are going to have access points. So I just want to be real clear on that and make sure that it's clear that we're also, as we're designing this, making sure we're using existing systems that we usually use to gather teacher input on that as well. So it doesn't seem like it's a top-down effort, but I also have to make sure, remind everyone that's listening and our governing board that we have to have consistency between schools. We can't have individual teachers doing their own thing, particularly when you have multiple families and you have one teacher assigning things a certain way. We need continuity as a district more than ever right now, particularly as we're just kind of ensuring access to these remote learning opportunities for them.
And just to tag on to that, that's been a lot of our work around the K2, K3. We had teacher voice, you see that on there. We today met with about 30 teachers, I guess, 35 teachers in different Google Hangouts, talking through the resources we've provided, particularly around K2. What are they seeing? How do we help manage that? We're doing things like recording stories. I know Dr. Hackett was in the other room yesterday recording math stories, so that there are these additional links that are in play. We have, so when our curriculum is accessed online, it's not personalized learning where the kid gets is on the computer answering questions and doing that all day. They're logging into that, or they're getting into that, and it's common to what they have. And for our teachers, it's the same. Our teachers don't have these huge, they didn't have to come and pick up all their teachers' editions. They have that electronically as well. So it enables us to be a little more nimble in this work. The teacher voice we will continue with. We are also looking at setting up Wednesday collaboration is a comfortable structure for us. We are going to be doing some Google Hangout collaborations that gives the teachers the ability to collaborate across sites, not just within. They're doing a lot of that within. We will bring our lead learners from middle school and high school that we've leveraged all year to help us, particularly at the high schools where there's so many more teachers and or students. We have Google Hangouts already set up throughout the week for various teacher groups that we're engaging in conversations as we go. I will have the coaches, we had a coaches meeting Friday scheduled anyway. We will have a virtual coaches meeting where we're just able to continue to refine this work. It is imperfect, but what we're finding is we're able to reduce the variability by conversations across and kind of providing these overarching structures that are in play. One of the pieces that we do have as an expectation is we do have an expectation for sort of this office hours sort of check-in piece that teachers have with kids, that they have an availability for kids during the day to reach out. Some of the teachers, a lot of screencasting is going on of teachers actually recording and talking to kids in those lessons. They could be downloaded if they don't have internet at the time. They could take them home to watch them. But the other thing that we're finding is a lot of, even our families that don't necessarily have internet, they are communicating with Remind or text with a lot of their teachers. So they're getting information around it that's in addition to whether or not they have internet. So that's been a really helpful piece. Phone calls, as we bring in IAs and start to work through that. We have groups that normally tutor with kids, our avid tutors. We talk through a plan to say, can they Google Hangout just like they would in class? When a kid has a point of confusion in work, they bring a tutoring group forward. They have that conversation in Google Hangout. So we're going to get better at that as we move through this week, to know that our focus as curriculum instruction this week is to really, really strengthen and move that forward. You see this web resource, Learn from Home. That is blog of sorts that we have that is, we load a lot of resources. If a teacher doesn't know how to set up Google Classroom, go ahead and, you want to click on that? He's been dying to do that, so this is good. So if you scroll, if you look, so you see some different announcements and stuff, but if you, as he goes farther to the bottom, you'll see things that are different resources for teachers, setting up their workspace, some access for them as they communicate, how do they set up Google Classrooms. So we continue to populate this. We're getting a lot of feedback from teachers, from principals on what teachers need, and then we have part of our staff who are actually working to create these. If there needs to be a screencast to say, oh my gosh, how am I going to teach my kids to do what Mr. Holmes said, as we're said, to download when they get to the place. All right, we need instructions for parents, we need instructions for students, we need instructions for teachers. We can do that in real time, or almost real time, and then have a common place that we are posting and listing that. When we communicate these curricular guidelines, one of the things that we have learned is we do Google Hangouts with principals, because this is too much, as you can imagine, to, one, leave up to interpretation of how I write the email or how I write the guideline, but when they're in these conversations, we can interact with the principals and create clarity at the same time. So this is a live, living, breathing resource that we are currently using as well. One last thing before we do questions, I think that's on there is grading and assessments. So I know this is a hot topic, of course, that comes up. What this is our thinking, we're going to put out more guidance to the sites for next week. So this week is sort of hold harmless for kids as well as it is for everyone else, as we're figuring out how to establish this remote learning space. The K-8s, we will be moving to a pass-fail situation for quarter 4. For high schools, it's a little bit trickier, but what we're doing, and there are other districts like doing similar things, which is really transitioning to a maintain or improve for their grade, from their quarter 3. So no kid is going to drop from their quarter 3 grade that's there. Now, we, of course, if this is not in stone, if we see, if we, as we're moving forward, see things we need to adjust, then we can do that. But it's also for those kids who are really doing a lot on here, we want to give them the ability to improve. So it's really kind of managing that maintain or improve from their quarter 3 grades moving forward. The requirement piece, we're not asking teachers to grade everything, because it's inequitable. How am I going to do it if I'm not here, if I'm there, if I'm doing it online and I'm doing it on paper? We're not looking to say, here's a packet. Let's say we have families and here's a packet of their first graders' work. We're not asking them to bring it back to the teacher on Friday so it can be graded. We're looking at ways, which is in line with our formative assessment work, you'll be glad to know, that we're working on feedback with kids. How are we constantly giving them feedback around their learning? It's not a grade in a grade book. We'll be working with Mr. Baca's department as well to figure out what does grade book look like in Power School. Teachers, I have a lot of questions there. We've just said for now, just hold on till we figure out what we want to put in there and how do we document, because teachers need a place to see and know where their kids are doing, and if we were to come back into regular session, we need a jumping off point to do that. So we'll be continuing to do that. The state has submitted the waivers for AZ Merit, AZM2, AZ Merit, AIM Science, and also the MSAA that our special needs students take. The feds have said the waivers will be granted. Arizona's just in the process of submitting that waiver, so we fully expect that to be taken off for the year. Our Azella tests were completed before spring break, so all we have to do now is mail them in, and we're in process of doing that. The direction around AP, SAT, ACT, all of that is coming in. There's online options. There's a lot going on out there. What we are committed to is ensuring that our kids get their due in those spaces. So we we don't have a lot specifically. At that moment, we are, and Mr. Gastelba is out in that dark room. We can also get him if we have additional questions there. But we are keeping very much on top of that, and we'll work to ebb and flow with how we best make sure our students have that. So, yes. Any questions on that before you want to extend?
I have a few questions.
Okay.
Move on in reading, move on when reading, is that waived as well, or do we know?
That's way.
Yes, wait.
Okay, I admit,
It's on
Yeah.
it's on the bill.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on the
Yeah.
new House bill.
One of the things I was looking at as you were going through this is, we may be doing some things in this process that are actually better than what we were doing
I
before.
said that today, yes. I agree
And
with
so
you.
I just want to make sure that we mark those improvements, that that when we go back to whatever normal is, we can carry those with us and we don't lose that improvement, so.
That's exactly, we were talking about that today, particularly with our high school students and our seniors as well. If they're college bound, this learning to transition to working online, I mean, even if you have a face-to-face class, you still work online. And so there are a lot of college-ready pieces that we want to do. Also, as we move forward, I think there are many, many, many opportunities that our high school students who our kids miss coming to school. They're so sad. But I think there are ways that they can help us by reading books to kids. We can record them, doing some upbeat public service announcements, really engaging our kids from afar, even doing we talked about doing Google Hangouts for Superintendent's Advisory, or really engaging our kids as much as we can as well, because I agree with you. I think there are some lessons to be learned here that we might not have even thought possible before, that we're now, we're seeing what that looks like. So I appreciate that. Yep.
Okay, questions from the board. Ms. Dong?
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions here. In taking a look, I know you gave us a lot of information about the grades and things like that. So from what I'm seeing, that the students will mostly be on K through 8 pass and fail, and then maintain to improve on the high schools. What are we doing to encourage that the students get onto the internet and do their work? I mean, are they being held accountable for any of that, as far as making sure that we don't just pass them from one place to another without them having ever even really gotten onto the internet to do the work that the teachers are putting out there for them? What kind of incentives are we giving them, or consequences are we giving them if we have students that aren't getting online and doing the work that the teachers are putting online?
That's a great question, and that's one of the reasons that we're really leveraging Google Classroom or Class Dojo in some of our schools as well. Is it's really the teachers. That's why the office hours and the teachers' daily contact with the kids matter. Their assignments, the kids who can will upload them, which in all honesty is many of our kids, and they're currently doing it now. So like our high schoolers in Springboard, they're used to putting their work in. So it's the teachers are the ones who are going to be following up with that. One of the reasons we're going to find a way that Power School also can function in what we're putting in there is if a teacher sees a kid who's consistently, we have to have an ability to see how kids can consistently over time. If they're not submitting, then that teacher works out. We also may work out with our counselor, our principal, whoever else is there, to really figure out what's happening with that kid so that we don't have kids basically blowing it off.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. I really think it's going to have to be site by site, working with principal and teachers. I am not supportive of creating a district policy around that, quite frankly, in this really unique time. I think we're going to have to work through it. If a kid doesn't get online, there's got to be a reason for that. But I think taking a punitive approach to it, I think the motivation is going to have to come by individual teachers and whoever knows those students. I really don't think a district-wide policy on this would be prudent at this time.
I agree, and I agree we shouldn't do anything punitive. So one of the things I know that I mentioned to you before, Mr. Holmes, and I was going to wait till curriculum, Mr. Raga came on, but I'll go ahead and mention it now. I think one of the good things that we could do perhaps is put something on the web for teachers to get onto, and then maybe something on the web for the principals to get onto that talk about some of their strategies of encouraging or their strategies in teaching the things that we are asking them to teach. What are some things that they're doing that is working really well that we would like to share? And at the same time, if there's a teacher out there that's struggling and he can ask that question, I'm having a problem with this issue as far as getting the students to call in, or whatever it might be, whatever issue it might be. If there's an area for teachers to get onto the website that is district-only teachers, not statewide, but just Sunnyside district teachers, and some of their questions or some of their suggestions that where they can go on to, and then maybe another one where, well, mostly for that one as far as the teachers are concerned.
So we don't have that on the website, but we do. That's the work that we're building around collaboration and collaborative groups, and we'll leverage the Learn from Home resource place. That'll be a place where we can have some of those conversations and what that starts to look like. So that was part of our conversation, talking with the teachers today, to really find out what they're looking for, and they gave us some great ideas on how they would like to connect and communicate with each other across sharing some of those ideas. So that's one of the projects that we're putting into play, is how do we start to put those together for teachers as we're moving forward into next week.
Great, glad to hear that. Thank you.
And Ms. Dong, when you get a chance, link on that thing. There's like a post place. So this is it's developing. I think that site can be the place where that can occur pretty naturally. We just got to get people to migrate there as a place where they can post and respond to each other with a series of questions. We're struggling to make this private. That's the only thing that's our biggest challenge, because once you post things, I mean, it can get a little bit more out of control. So that's our own technical challenges right now, but I think this could become that place that you're mentioning that actually is teed up pretty well for that.
Okay, the Learn from Home.
Yeah.
Okay, that one? Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Jaramillo, do you have any questions?
Yes, just one or two here. I think it's essential for that helpline for the teachers, especially for the ones that this is new to them. And I'm sure some of them are probably very receptive, and not because they don't want to, because of the knowledge they may have of especially our tenured teachers that have been here for a few years. And I sure hope that they're asking those important questions, how do we function through this? I'm glad to see the web that you put up for the teachers as well. I don't think students should be penalized for possibly not being able to get their assignments in. There should be kind of strategies so if and when they can make up the assignments that were missed at the time because of the lack of internet access. It's really sad that our libraries are closed as well as LRCs, but I'm glad to hear that there's a possibility of our buses going out to different sites and students can go to them. But I want to thank you for all the hard work the staff has put into this instructional curriculum. So thank you much.
Welcome.
That's it.
Ms. Quintero.
Yes, now that we got to curriculum, and so that was a good thing. I do want to thank the hotspot on the buses. That's a great idea. Some students were slated to take the SATs on March 14th. Did they take it, or was it canceled?
We didn't have a date for March 14th. Not at least not at our district set up. It could have been other places setting up, but that was not the date that we've had set up.
Mr. Gastelum's out in the hallway. We'll ask him that question.
Okay, because, some of the kids weren't going to make the ceremony because they said they had to take the SATs that day. So that's why I was worried. I wondered if they took it.
If they took it, it was not a district sponsored.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. All right.
Here he comes.
As it comes.
The question,
I did hear
question is that
something
we
about
have
the
an
SAT,
SAT
but I
scheduled
still,
for March 14th?
I broke up, my phone broke up, so I
There
didn't
was
hear the
there
whole.
was a Saturday SAT that was scheduled that had to be canceled.
That had to get canceled.
And then we have an ACT that was scheduled for April 7th for all our juniors in high school, but that will also have to be, we're working with individuals to get that rescheduled as well.
Did you get that, Ms. Quintero?
I heard something.
Could you?
Yes, I will repeat it. I repeat it. So SAT, there was one on a Saturday, I believe that was March 14th, that had to be rescheduled. Now, that was an SAT that was optional for students to sign up for, and there was a fee for that. However, the ACT, which we do administer to all our high school juniors, was going to take place April 7th, and that now will have to be rescheduled as well. So we're working with individuals to reschedule that.
So they didn't lose any funding, to take the tests?
No, they will not lose any funding.
Okay. But thank you. You guys all worked really hard to make this really successful in these trying times. So, yeah, you all are thinking outside the box.
trying.
Thank you.
Ms. Hernandez?
Yes, just quickly 2 questions. From my understanding, I had spoke to a few students last week. They mentioned, I think you said it was Google Hangouts that our teachers are using.
Google.
Is that now unblocked? Because from what I was told, there was a website that was blocked.
Yes, our teachers use Google Classroom a lot, but Google Hangouts is the other thing that we do, and yes, that has been since unblocked, so that also teachers can have a Google Hangout with students, with groups of students,
Okay.
and as well, so yes.
Thank you. And then the other question, as it relates, I'm a little bit concerned about the students who might fall through the cracks, who are already struggling with attendance. Besides the teacher checking in on them, they're on the front lines, obviously. Do we have a tracker that that someone else will be overseeing it, or what is the process looking like now, since things are changing quite a bit with the shift to online learning?
So it mostly it follows what Mr. Holmes also said earlier. The sites are really leaning in. So the sites, in addition to the teachers, if they have students they're having difficulty contacting, it could look different ways. There's a lot of phone contact going out. We may make we may make a physical contact at the home. In the elementaries, you have an ABSS who's also following up, trying to make sure our office staff. So yes, particularly to those students who have sort of flagged in the past for things like attendance, those are on kind of hot lists for principals to follow up with teachers.
Just let me add to that. I just want, this is why we need to be able to call people in when we need them for these situations. I just want to make sure that's clear, because those that refused, I really am going to take a harder stance on this, because we have kids that we still need to reach out for. That means I may need a counselor to go out, do a home visit, and try to get a hold of some of these kids, and we can't do that remotely if they're not answering their phones. And so this is why I need our governing board to stand with me as we deal with kind of some of these more difficult situations with students, where whoever that person is that has a relationship may have to go out there and do something that they can't do from home. And so to your point, Ms. Hernandez, we're going to have to use other additional staff to actually make some home contact for some of these hard to reach students. I'm particularly concerned about our seniors as a top priority, and then working our way down for some of those students that we can't. We do have staff that I still expect to help and assist with these efforts. And who that is going to vary by site, based upon not necessarily who wants to do it, it's going to be very on who's the most appropriate person for that student.
The other thing we're finding is a lot of our high school students, or particularly older students, have jobs that they're now able to spend more hours working at during the day, and or some places that are doing some temporary hires that our kids are taking advantage of. So we are also working and going to continue working with our high school teachers to know that what may appear to be absences during the day, if you will, are actually kids who are working during the day and are going to be doing their things at night, getting to sort of that due by midnight kind of college type concept. But that's also something that I don't think we actually, I don't know, we didn't really think through in the very beginning, but it is something that we've already seen or heard from kids, that a lot of them are working hours during the day, so they may appear as absences that we have to be really cognizant of following through to make sure those kids are being caught up and knowing that they can access that whenever, and how do we accommodate for that.
Thank you.
Ready for Dr. Williams?
Mr. Crouch, I had a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Yes, Assistant Mr. Costello, is he still in the room?
Mr.
Yes.
Costello? Yes.
He's coming up to the mic.
Okay, great. I heard that the ACTs that were going to be held next month will be rescheduled, but I wasn't quite sure about the SAT. Now, the SAT was that Saturday that was supposed to happen, the just before spring break, if I understand. Now, that one was canceled. That one did not happen. And is that going to be rescheduled also?
As of right now, both of them have been canceled, and we're waiting for further direction in terms of if those will be rescheduled. That's where we're at with both of them right now. But
Thank you.
Okay.
I didn't hear at the beginning.
all right,
There was a little noise or something. I didn't hear about the SATs, but thank you very much.
you're very welcome.
I want to, just in the curriculum instruction, I want Dr. Williams to speak towards just exceptional education. This is a really important subgroup of students that we need to continue educating. And I just want to spend a little bit of time just talking about what we are doing with our exceptional education students, how is staff looking, and how we're making the necessary accommodations. And I'll tee it up real quick. One of the reasons why it's important for us to not create all these different resources that teachers can do on their own and stay with the curriculum that we have already available is because it has a lot to do with the fact that we need to still provide accommodations for students. And so if individual teachers are doing their own thing, we're not going to be able to manage individual accommodations with our resource teachers for different assignments they're being. So the necessity for tightening the parameters around curriculum is not just because it's better for our kids and our parents, but it's also better for accommodations relative to our special needs students. And so I'll turn it over for Dr. Williams to speak a little bit to that and why our curriculum resources have to remain the ones that we're used to doing, so the accommodations are already stuff that we already do normally and routinely, but then more importantly, what are we doing with our more severe and profound students who need additional, the more involved students that we need help with.
Okay. Good evening, President Crouch and board members and Superintendent Holmes. So as Mr. Holmes indicated, that's hugely important. So the work that we do together, and I always have to praise this work that we do in Sunnyside, and the fact that as the exceptional ed director, I sit with curriculum instruction. In many districts, that's not how it looks. And this is important. I have to be keenly aware of the curriculum that is provided to all students so that we can better ensure that our special educators are familiar with it, and they also know how to accommodate, adapt, and modify the work. This week, I brought together, actually Monday morning, I had started communicating with a small subgroup of different staff from my department to pull together sort of a think tank. And Monday morning, that's really what we did, because I really need to also consider not only the special ed teachers, but as well as the related service staff, so speech pathologists, occupational therapists, the role of the psychologist, and how they also are sort of interacting with the curriculum, but with the students and in supporting them. What was really kind of interesting, after about an hour of us sort of brainstorming and they, just giving me some things that I didn't want to lose sight of, the outcome of that conversation really was about, wow, you know, we're on this momentum to be more inclusive because we want more of our students with disabilities to be engaged with the gen ed and their gen ed peers. And in some ways, this is a really great way to really reinforce that same work that we've started. So with our students, just to give you sort of a concept, we have just about 2,000 students who have disabilities in Sunnyside School District and have an IEP. Of them, probably about 70 to 75% are in the gen ed. So, which makes perfect sense that the resource teachers who support those students are tapping into the planning that the general ed teachers are doing. So this next week, as Ms. Benton mentioned, that we're working on some guidance because, again, this is a little bit of a shift for some, where they really are going to have to make it a point to be collaborative partners. And I think our gen ed teachers are also open to that because, in fact, this week there have been a couple of reaching out to us on, I have, you know, my student, how do I accommodate this? Or what is, you know, if I have a student who can't read a passage, how is this done? And that's a perfect time to collaborate with a special ed teacher to make those accommodations and kind of work out a plan on how they'll support students, and especially as we go forward with remote learning. The other thing that we did also is, like I said, wanting to make sure that all our related service staff, as well as the teachers, because we have a huge compliance requirement. Mr. Holmes this week and myself, we and others have gotten lots of emails from information that was put out from the Office of Civil Rights as well as the Office of Special Ed Program, which are the federal offices that talk about and remind us that we have to ensure that we provide FAPE, which is free appropriate public education, to students when the gen ed population receives their instructions. So with us moving forward to a remote learning opportunity, we need to make sure that all students with disabilities are also included in that. But that also is one step further, is that we also have to ensure that we still focus on the student's individual education plan, because those are the plans that really guide sort of that specialized instructions that they might need based on the type of disability that they have. And so there were lots of questions from the staff on sort of timelines, because everything that we do is related to timelines and what can we accomplish and what can't we accomplish. Pretty quickly, by actually yesterday morning, we were on a call with the Arizona Department of Ed. In fact, we have another one this week on Thursday, and some new guidance have come out also from some of the special ed attorneys that we work with, just to remind us that we want to still be doing IEPs, those individual education plans, because they are done annually. So just letting our staff know that this week, if they had scheduled meetings, that now we will do those via Google Hangouts or telephone calls and inviting the school teams. And I appreciate the principals, because as all the communications we've been in, they've been supportive to make sure that there's a gen ed representative on those team meetings, the special ed teachers, and anybody else who might need to be on a particular meeting for students. There are some other compliance issues, so I'm not going to go into each one of those, but I just wanted to kind of give you a highlight of some of those pieces that, you know, we always have to keep eyesight on. Our social workers are also working very closely with families, especially those that are sort of on our radars, that we want to make sure that we stay in touch and provide supports. And also reaching out to students that we know have traditionally been somewhat at risk and on our radars, but also we're also getting emails and requests for supports from counselors and others. So they've been already making contacts with parents who are needing some resources. We will also be partnering our social workers, and my coordinator, Melissa Molina Garcia, who oversees that, will be partnering with the AWARE team as well as NJ and the counselors, so that we can have sort of a systematic approach to this. By, you know, bringing all our resources together, we can probably serve and ensure that we are keeping tabs on families that might need that type of support. As you know, I have two program specialists. They will be meeting starting this week for 30 minutes with every site team using the Google Hangouts, just checking in with the psychologists and the speech pathologists and those teachers on how things are going, how we're servicing students. Are students showing up for this? Because that is another piece that we will monitor. We want to ensure that the students are participating, and if they aren't, why? And how do we then maybe do some other types of supports for that student? And then as far as our Sun itinerant teachers, they too have been working and planning this week, and they've done their work remotely, but they've been on Google Hangouts as well, planning lessons and activities for their students. They've also contacted the parents of the children that they support as part of their caseload of being itinerant staff. And this week, we will also be incorporating some of their planning in the guidelines that we provide in the coming week when we begin the remote training. So, any questions?
I have one about the students that are not in the special ed students that are not in the general education arena.
Self-contained.
Yeah,
Those
sorry.
that are
Self-contained.
the self-contained.
How are you
What
serving?
can we do and what are we doing?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, it's like you kind of run through everything in your head, and so of course I don't want to miss that population of students, sort of that other 25%. So those teachers will also they've already started reaching out, just like all the teachers, to their families, making arrangements of what that interaction will be like. In many cases, we can do a lot of the instruction via the Hangouts, so doing sort of that web type instruction. In fact, tonight I was pretty excited, so I'll make sure I share it with Mr. Holmes, and he can share it with all of you. One of our teachers at the high school, who has probably one of our most significant groups, are students with multiple disabilities. They tend to be medically fragile and have much more significant disabilities. She did her first sort of enrichment lesson this week, where she worked with the librarian and Kate Street, actually, and helped her develop a story that she recorded. She read it, introduced some vocabulary, and it really was talking about COVID and understanding why you're not in school. Because for some of our students, this is tough. I mean, their teachers are a huge part of their day. So now you're home all day, and not that it's not okay to be home with mom and dad or whoever your guardian is at that point, but they're getting used to these routines. So it's nice that she went ahead and it's a real nice sample that we will share with our other teachers. And this is going to be something similar across the board with those teachers reaching out. The biggest piece for our students with more significant disabilities is it's really that partnership with the family and that communication, because there will have to be sort of that together working to make sure the students interact and engage with the lessons that are provided. Often our students do require some adult support, or maybe helping them go through particular things, or getting the materials out and so forth. Especially like students with who have intellectual disabilities, often they can engage just like some of our other students who are in the gen ed, but there has to be that more thoughtful guidance as far as what that looks like, and maybe how information is read to them, and the teachers will have to do a bit more planning on having things already read, or maybe even do some individual. It won't be often in a group setting. Whereas you could do small group instructions with some students, but with our students in the self-contained, it might require more one-on-one opportunities. So I hope that kind of gives a little bit of...
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Dong, do you have any questions?
No, I know that this is a difficult situation for our students that have special needs, but I'm really glad to hear that we're going to be able to continue to do their IEPs.
Thank you.
Mr. Jaramillo.
No, it's just overwhelming. I mean, what you folks have been through and what you have put in place is it's a phenomenal job. One of the questions that I do have we reached out to the seniors like we have in the past that might be in the bubble of possibly not graduating? What kind of efforts are we doing there?
I'm having Mr. Descalico.
Yes.
So right Hello, everyone. Right before the break, you know, and this is what we do typically every year, is we identify, we call it the green, the yellow, and the red. We develop an Excel sheet of all our seniors and where they're at with graduation status. So they have been identified. We will start reaching out to these seniors to figure out what their plan is. We know with many of them, there's already a plan in place, especially for those that are on the bubble, right? And so, again, the green list of students are pretty set and are on track to graduate. Our students that are in that yellow category are on the bubble. They may need, they may be taking a math class in Math Lab. They may be doing Weekend Academy. They may be taking an online class to graduate. And then we have some that have a lot more makeup, the ones that are in the red, and we're working with them as well. So there is definitely going to be communication from the counselors, and also their administrators. The plan moving forward before this situation is each administrator is assigned a group of seniors, especially in the yellow and the red, that they meet with on a weekly basis, as well as with their counselors, to discuss their graduation plans moving forward. And more importantly, that we're being transparent in our communication, not only with the students, but also with the parents as we get near that graduation date.
Okay. The only thing that's going to be lacking is the town hall meetings, eh?
I'm sorry, I did.
Town hall meeting. Town hall, we're not gonna.
Yeah.
No, we won't.
That-
You know, we won't be doing town hall meetings. But what I do expect is the same communication that occurs through the town halls, emailed out to seniors. That important information that is covered during at Desert View, they call them town halls, and at Sunnyside they call them devil dialogues. So that's their grade level assemblies that they have with their students. So
Right.
the expectation is that communication is clear and that they're continuing to communicate with our seniors, because as Mr. Holmes said earlier, our seniors are our priority here with you know, so many weeks of school that we have left to work with them.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Ms. Quintero, do you have any questions?
No, this is good stuff. You guys, it's all so good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hernandez, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. I'm going to ask Mr. Baca now to speak to technology internet access, and we have one more section. Governing Board, I'll apologize in advance. I know there's a lot of information, but I really felt like this has got to be comprehensive for all of you. As you're getting questions, inquiries from the community, I need to let you know all the work that's gone into it from our district leadership team and directors. That is pretty comprehensive, and I don't want to shortchange the information for you or the general public early on. So if you bear with us, we just have a couple more sections left.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, President Crouch, members of the board, and Superintendent Holmes. I'd certainly like to give you an overview of what we've been doing and prioritizing in the IT department in preparation and in response to this situation. As we discussed this week, presented a challenge in identifying how we're going to meet some of the most pressing needs to our community in planning for an extended school closure. One of the things right prior to the initiation of spring break, Mr. Holmes, Ms. Benton, and I were doing some planning, and it dawned on us that we typically ask students to keep laptops at school over spring break so that we can minimize damage to those laptops in preparation for AZ merit testing. But we quickly identified, well, you know what, let's not do that. Let's rush to get them sent home. I'm glad we took that approach because it really cut down on the number of devices we had to follow up to try to make sure we had communication pathways to our students. Because by sending those laptops home, we cut down on that number drastically. And so I spoke to that because that has been one of our primary priorities this week And that is just getting laptops into the hands of students, identifying those that didn't get them sent home over spring break, and getting them into those hands of students. And so, as I spoke to our staff over the break, and as things were changing day to day, we quickly realized, well, we can't require staff to come in this week, based off of this, the legislation and the direction from the governors regarding school closure. That presented that challenge that, well, one of the critical aspects that is a necessity of our employees is getting laptops repaired and getting them back to, and managing the inventory and getting them into the hands of students. And so that's one of them that I want to express my appreciation and acknowledge the commitment that the culture of commitment that exists within the IT department, because many of the technicians, when I asked them, if you're willing to voluntarily come into work, despite the fact that we can't require you to, many did. Many came in, and we gave them those assurances that they should have. That, like, you're not required to work with anybody. In fact, most of them said, just continue, just work alone at your school site. But what your task is to three things are the priority of their task. Identify the laptops that need to be given to students. Contact your school principal and your other office staff to facilitate a pickup of those laptops. Work with your school staff to establish their remote connectivity, the accessibility of them to be able to work remotely. And then the third one was this is another quick thing that we identified was going to be a need is extend our Wi-Fi access into the perimeter of the school grounds, primarily our parking lots, so that we can inform our community that if you don't have internet access at home, you can simply drive into the school parking lot, maintain that social distance radius, but still be able to have sufficient connectivity to work, and if you want to spend as much time as on the parking lot, you're welcome to. So that information, that's the work that those technicians who volunteered to come in this week are doing. And so that's been our priority this week, and recognizing the responsibility that we have as an IT department to be that kind of that hub that enables our ability to do remote learning and to do work from home. And it's critical that we understand that important responsibility, and at least we'll prioritize all that work this week so that we can transition into a work from home following that first push of laptop distribution and accessibility priority. And so that's what I'm referring to as a student remote learning preparedness and staff remote working preparedness, and that has been our priority this week. The next piece is expanding our help desk operations. We finished doing some planning today and developed a kind of a tiered help desk system. Traditionally, we've had like a two-tiered help desk system where it's our primary help desk person is manning the phones, managing the incoming web requests and emails, and distributing those to the technicians. We're going to add a third tier to that, and we're going to add some initial triage people. The most important thing we want people to know is that if they submit a help desk request, they're going to get a call back from their school technician who they already have a relationship with. This is not some person who they don't know. They're just this person is going to be working from home. They're going to get a work order, and they're going to immediately know that it's what their expectation during these work from home days is to immediately respond to those people and give them the support that they're asking for. We've enabled a lot of systems to provide those remote access capabilities. Things like Quick Assist and remote desktop, so that if a teacher or a student sends in a request, they can immediately connect to that person's device remotely, see what they see on their screen, and assist them and help them. And if they can't, if it's something that's beyond that level of that triage level, then they kick it up to our next level of help desk, which are our IT technicians and our lead technicians. They'll address any issues there, and ultimately another third tier that we've established to help address those needs. But it's with a service mentality of that we want people to know that they're going to get in contact with the person who they most already have a relationship with about supporting them, and that contact is going to happen quickly and effectively. So that's been our design, and that's going to be our priority starting next week when we have a work from home more permanent mindset, because right now we're kind of still in this transitionary window. What has been, what we expect to do is that, as Mr. Holmes has mentioned, there are a few things that we simply cannot do from home. What I consider is the most pressing thing that our tasks that I'm going to have to ask some technicians to do is laptop repair and laptop distribution, because as we go into however many weeks this closure takes, as we go into that prolonged closure, laptops will break. And what we want to do is have a quick and an easy way for a laptop to be replaced by that. So two technicians, the way we envision is the two technicians will be working in the central office on a rotation basis. That doesn't mean that they're going to be working every day. It's just going to be a different two every day. That means basically a technician will be asked to come in once every 2 weeks and work that day. Their task is to facilitate an exchange of a laptop, and we can do so in a very safe and secure way, meaning we don't have to, we'll still provide protective equipment, but they can facilitate that exchange, and it's a student setting up a time to come in, and that time should be quick and easy, and that student will bring their laptop, they'll get another replacement laptop to go home, and they can go home and immediately get back into their instructional expectations. And then as that technician receives that laptop, now it gets added to our queue of devices that we repair, and we add back to the replacement pool. So it's just this wheel that's turning, that's constantly being, so that's the priority that we provide. So that combined with our expanded help desk operation is what we hope will be able to ensure that our staff at large, both teachers, students, and classified staff, get the support they need in this unprecedented way of working and educating students. I talked about our site to extend our Wi-Fi into parking lots. I want to complete those extensions by this Friday, if not sooner. All of the technicians who are working are doing so. I have technicians constructing cables, identifying this place to mount the access points, and making sure that by Friday we can deliver a commitment to a community that you can start to come to your schools the following week if you need Wi-Fi access. The options for parents for communication, there's a variety of things like that, and learnfromhome.sufc12.org is a part of that. One side of that resource is directed at classified staff to provide them directions on how they can, and to the community on exactly what I just described, what the options they have for Wi-Fi, for remote connectivity, and other things of that nature. So we intend on growing that to be a very valuable resource so that people can know and get questions answered and immediately know what to do when they have a question or when they need something of that sort. This E-rate mobile hotspot discount being explored, there's two avenues to this, and this is speaking to what Mr. Homer mentioned, and I think Ms. Hernandez asked a question about those students. There's two opportunities that we hope can materialize. One is E-rate has antiquated rules that are looking at being modified in real time so that in this coming E-rate application we can quickly apply for mobile hotspots and receive the same E-rate discount. And then if we're able to do so, then we can realize a lot of savings by purchasing a large set of that. So that's being pursued. Today I got an email from the state technology coordinator, and his question says, we are working on something and please stay tuned, but here's what I need to know from you. How many of your students do not have internet access at home? And how many of your students do not have devices at home? I was able to respond to both of those because of the parent survey that we sent out. And the good news is that the students, grades 4 through 12, we can say 0 of those students do not have devices at home because we have a device for them. Not all of them have them at this moment, but we are going to make sure that we're doing everything we can to get them in their hands. And so we can assure that zero students need a device from 4 through 12. Based on Mr. Holmes quoted those, and those were spot on based off of the numbers we're getting back from, it's 82% of our parents have reported they do have internet access, and 18% do not. Based off that 18%, it's approximately right about 3,000 students who would need devices. Now, 3,000 devices is a lot to expect to get in a short time, but what the implication was on that email from the state technology coordinator was that we are working on a plan for schools to be able to address this need, and so stay tuned on that. So that's the other avenue that we're pursuing. Our other part is providing that Wi-Fi connectivity via buses, especially the buses that are delivering meals. It can really be a point where students who face this need know that they can go and pick up lunch, pick up breakfast, but also sit and wait there while I'm there picking up lunch and breakfast. Not on the bus. Not on the bus, yeah. Within a radius of about 50 feet of the bus, staying socially distant, but they'll still have the connectivity, but they can download their content for the day or the week and collect all those things and then go home and be provided that access. Another part of that is, short of that state-sponsored mobile hotspot program, the district has 80 buses that we provide Wi-Fi on already. We're not going to be using all 80 of those buses in the near future for transporting students. We're going to be using, we're estimating between 20 and 30 of those we'll be using for this Wi-Fi and packet delivery, food delivery. So what that means is there's about 50 devices that I can suspend right now. And that's what we've begun to do. I've suspended their services, those Wi-Fi devices. By suspending those, this is going to be a cost-neutral stopgap where I'll now activate 50 mobile hotspots, and it won't cost the district any additional money this year. We've already budgeted and encumbered those expected expenses for internet access on buses, but we don't need those 50 buses because they're not being in use. So now we're just going to transfer those services onto mobile hotspots, and then that's a stopgap. We'll have 50 devices, and Mr. Holmes has asked that once we get those in hand, we prioritize towards our seniors. And any seniors who identify a need, we can find a way to get them into the seniors' hands so that they can take that mobile hotspot and they will have internet access at their home. And so that's the priority we're putting in on that plan. So I think that covers the broad picture and kind of what we're doing from a service standpoint, from internet access standpoint, communication standpoint. At this point, certainly want to ask if you have any questions.
I actually had a couple questions. One is, can we reach out to any providers, either cable providers or mobile device providers in our community, and ask them to partner with us?
Yeah.
To provide hotspots like Cox, Verizon, T-Mobile.
We have reached out. We've reached out. I've reached out to 2 of them. Well, I've been able to contact 2 of them, particularly Cox and Comcast. Cox actually proactively contacted me because we have an established relationship with Cox. We've been using them in their Connect to Compete program for years now. They said we're setting up an expedited way for your students to qualify, and we're going to give them 2 months of free access if they qualify for that Connect to Compete plan. So they've already committed to expedite those applications, meaning they're not going to make us jump through a lot of hoops. They're going to make sure that if we give them the names of families who have internet access and want to subscribe to Cox, great, we're going to expedite it, and they're going to get 2 months, 60 days of free service with that plan. And remember, that's a low-cost plan. That's only $9.95 a month for broadband internet access. So we are working on that. And as I said, I've reached out to some other providers. I've had some mobile providers. The thing about it is there's restaurants and businesses that are providing mobile free Wi-Fi hotspots. But I do think that if you're going to go to that extent, our schools will be a more safe location to be able to have a wide space, and you don't have to. There might be other people trying to get that internet access in those smaller locations, but our school has a big parking lot or a big school playground field, and they can rest easy knowing that they have strong connectivity, and it's dedicated for their needs only.
Just to add, and we are keeping all our schools open from 8 to 1 currently, just for people to come in, just making sure, even though there's not staff there, we're maintaining the school being open, just as parents want to drop by, their questions and those types of things as well. And we'll continue to do so through the school closures.
Ms. Dong, do you have any questions?
Just wow. It's incredible. Mr. Buck, I want to thank you and your team there. They're doing an incredible job. I am very proud. I have a lot of pride with what Sunnyside is doing as far as the online and the preparedness. Also, of course, we're going to be doing some things that are not online, but the majority of it is going to be is online. And the preparedness that you have, and you and your staff have put into place is just incredible. And I want to thank you so much for going by the box and thinking about parking lots and thinking about expanding the help desk operations, and all those things that you just detailed are just incredible. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jaramillo.
No, just ditto what Ms. Dong said. It's just phenomenal what all of you guys are doing. It is a very proud moment because they're like they're saying, there is no I in this team. I mean, it's been a big team effort, and I want to thank every one of you for what you all are doing. Thank you.
Ms. Quintero?
I'm overwhelmed. You guys are, this is so great. We are Sunnyside proud. You guys are great. Thank you.
Ms. Hernandez?
I just want to thank everyone. Everyone moved so quickly. There were so many moving parts. I'm really impressed by what we were able to put together in such a short amount of time. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baca.
Thank you.
Mr. Holmes?
Just the last, I want, if Dr. Favela can come and share a little bit about just kind of what we're doing at the health and wellness area with nurse health assistant. We're going to elaborate a little bit more on mental health and support services, particularly what our counselors and our WARE team are doing at this time with our students that really need additional support for those in those areas as well. So I'll just have Dr. Favela speak to those first two, and then we'll elaborate on the last one.
Great. Yes, Mr. Crouch, Governing Board members, and Superintendent Holmes. The first area that I want to address is the health services, which are the nurses and the health assistants. As you know, we have currently 9 FTE nurses in our district. 2 of them are coordinators, and there are health assistants in every one of the schools. And so they've been working already this week at doing Google Hangout meetings and talking amongst each other about the kinds of things they want to do. The first thing they wanted to do was get in touch with families, and especially of those children that have that are medically fragile, and make sure they're connecting with them. And also, because of the school closures, some of the students went away and left their medications locked up in the school drawer in the health office. And so they've been making contact with the parents to get those medications back to the students. And what the nurses and or the health assistants have been doing is then going over to the school. They can make arrangements. The parent drives up and she meets them into the parking lot, and they get those medications back to the children. They've been doing that. And so we've also taken inventory of which health assistants have computers at home, which ones don't, so that they could get one checked out to them, and so that they would be able to work from home. There are going to be some tasks that the health assistants and nurses, not all of them, will need to come in and take care of. Some of the files that need to be updated in some of the schools, especially the 2 high schools. Sunnyside High School, we had a vacancy there so long that there are still files that need work. And so those are some of the things they're going to help us with. And also making sure they're looking at the medications that have already expired, looking at expiration dates, and the things that were left in refrigerators, because they have snacks for diabetic kids, things that have expiration dates. So there's plenty to keep them busy, and they've been very good. Our 2 coordinators, they are assigned to 3 schools apiece, and they also coordinate the services. And so they're around making contact with, so they've done a really, really good job of making a list. In terms of the mental health and socio-emotional needs, we've been working together with NJ Utter, with Liz Allen, with the AWARE team, and also with McKinney-Vento and the work that they do there. And getting together, their first priority, the counselors, the first priority they have is to make contact with students and to have a list of students that they need to follow up with, as well as the AWARE team. Some of the ones that the students that they were already making contact with, they want to make sure to check in with them. Also, we have the mental health professionals. They are also making contact. And we have been compiling among ourselves resources that parents and students can access. But what we don't want, just like you can have a billion kinds of things bombarding parents of use this resource, use that resource. We want Marisela Felix is the Public Information Office at the direction of Mr. Holmes, wants one hub of where the parents can get those resources. And so they're vetted through NJ and the counselors, as well as through the AWARE team and through my office, that we've been looking at the resources, and we look at them and send them to Marisela, and Marisela puts them on her spreadsheet, which has been very helpful. That way, we have mental health services, other resources that parents can access if we need resources for adults as well as for children. So I think we have a really good team. The counselors that we have are very dedicated, as well as the AWARE team. I'm very impressed with the work that they've been doing thus far. So those are the things that if we have a master list, that we don't have just a bunch of resources floating around. We also use the Pima County Health Department that I've shared with Mr. Holmes, and that becomes part of what Marisela can use. They provide excellent resources, as does the Pima County Juvenile Court System. They also have excellent resources. And from Elizabeth Allen, we received a website that has just many great resources, and while we are looking through them all to weed through which ones are the most helpful, it's the 211arizona.org. It's the HTTPS 211arizona.org, and that has just everything from family services to healthcare to counseling to even a hotline for things like suicide and that kind of thing. We have to be aware that there are students and adults that have needs out there.
I'll just add, just so our school counselors, I know Ms. Utters has worked with them over the last couple of days to create a master list of students who need an immediate check-in and request and a system for working with their colleagues or teacher colleagues to identify students that they can communicate, that they have like a hot list of students that they immediately get to them. Then they will triage that as counselors, who they can work with and who they will have to refer outside, or who they'll refer to the AWARE team. So there's this really good triage system between the counselors and the AWARE team to make sure that we're addressing any individual students' needs, or we're creating a list and identifying potential students over the course of this closure as well.
It's good.
Thank you.
Really good stuff. Any questions?
Yes. One question is there a need for like a telemed type thing within our district for the families and our parents, for instance, if they have a question, they're not sure how to ask it even? Would there be a need for that could be filled by our nurses remotely for that type of thing?
Yes, Mr. Crouch, we just received information from TMC. They received a grant, so they have an app that's free, and it's a telemed where they can ask questions. They have things, everything from, diabetic questions or anything like that. And I've sent that. That was one of the resources Marisela put out there that parents can access. I'm not sure I have a call in to the person that I work with from TMC to see what availability they have in Spanish, if parents are able to get in. But right now, that is very helpful, I think, because they can just call and then they can just access the questions that way. And in the meantime, the nurses also are keeping track and looking at the kids that they have that have special medical issues, that they can contact them, because that is on their list as well of who they need to make sure they keep track of.
How about, I know you mentioned McKinney-Vento as one of the things that we're including. How about youth on their own and homeless? Otherwise, do we have other students that we need to reach out to?
Well, Araceli works a lot with the youth on their own and also with the McKinney-Vento. She has access to those students, and she communicates with the people from youth on their own as well. But that's an excellent question, that to know that the kids can access through what they call the Opportunity Center over at Los Ranchitos, where we have, the clothing bank is closed for right now unless there's a special need, they can get that. Because of the social distancing, we can't have people coming in and out of that clothing, but things like that. And she's pretty much taking any appointments or anything like that for kids that need help. The food pantry is a very small one, so we're not necessarily using that right now as much, but yeah, that's a way through Araceli's office, and Andrea helps us with some of that outreach with kids.
I did have a question about the personal items that the students may have left, especially the medical items, and you answered that right at the beginning, so thank you.
Right, thank you.
Ms. Dong, do you have any questions?
Yeah, there's a lot of details that sometimes we don't always think about. So thank you, Dr. Favela, for putting that team together that does think about those details, like the medication that the nurses have or that are at the school sites for the students, and getting them back to the students, and taking care of the medications that are in the refrigerators and stuff like that. So there's a lot of details that have to come into place in order for all of this to be successful. So thank you so much for making sure all those details were taken care of.
Mr. Alamillo.
Just once again, Dr. Favela, thank you and your team for what you have put together. Really greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Ms. Quintero.
Yeah, I want to know who's taking care of you all.
We all take care of each other.
Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Ms. Hernandez.
I'll echo what everyone else has said. I appreciate all the work you all have done, and thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing else, Chad.
Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, Dr. Favela. Again, I apologize for the length of this, but I think we needed to really talk about all the things that have been, all the work that's been happening over the course of these last 2 days. But more importantly, I want to commend our leadership team, our district leadership team, our directors. Last week was spring break, and I can tell you none of them had a spring break because we're on phone calls and constantly having community, because our community matters. And you know, this is I think an important stage and for us as a public institution to really start figuring out how we deal with, you know, things that are chaotic. I think the reality is I feel like our team has come together, has been very creative. I think we're in the front of many districts who haven't thought a lot of these details through, because I think we really have the best here. And the way I'm framing it with folks as we're moving forward is that, you know, we do have people that are scared to come in. There's some worry, there's some concerns, but the reality is, you know, we're as important as healthcare right now. You know, and I don't mean that in any demeaning way to the healthcare professionals, because they're doing it, but they're frontline workers. They have to come to work because our community needs healthcare right now at this point. And our community also needs education. And I find that to be an important part of why we do what we do. And even as we're challenged by distancing and trying to figure out distance learning, our priority still needs to be educating and taking care of our kids. And I just ask that you work with us, and if you have questions, kind of bring them up as we work with our community and our staff to understand the importance of them. Many do, but much of the fear associated with this horrible pandemic is, I think, clouding our ability to focus on some of the things that are most important in the tasks that we have. So we want people to take care of themselves first, their family first, but we have to take care of our community and our kids, and that has to be part of all of our employees' priorities as well.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. I am so proud and so honored to be part of the Sunnyside community with the excellent work that you and all of the staff have done to bring education to our children. It is one of the most important things we can do for them. Obviously, they have to be cared for their health and their nutrition, but what the school district is doing to bring quality education to our children, especially in a time when things are extremely difficult, it's just overwhelming. I also think that we should brag about this, how we're doing. And I think we should brag so that other people in the other communities around us know what we're doing and how we're doing it, and attracting some of their kids to come to Sunnyside. I think it's a good marketing opportunity for us. But thank you very much. Ms. Dong, do you have anything to add at this point?
I just want to thank everybody for tonight's presentations. It really gave us a much clearer understanding so that when we are asked questions by our community and others that we have the answer to them. There was a lot of detail, and I know it went long, but I'm glad that you took the time to tell us exactly what was happening in each of the different departments. I think it was important for all of us to understand that this is unprecedented times that we are in, and they're ever changing, ever evolving, but we are definitely rising to the occasion of trying to get this all figured out. So I appreciate each and every one of you that were here this evening, and all of your staff and the hard work that they're all putting into it. So thank you so much for coming out tonight and giving us this presentation and letting us know, all the different things that our district is doing and the benefits that it's giving our community. That's all.
Mr. Alamil.
Yes, Mr. Crouch. I would like to first and foremost thank Mr. Holmes for his leadership and the initiative he's taken in this issue, and the team and the team that you have put together. What a phenomenal job you all have done, and it truly gives me pride to say that I am part of the Sunnyside family. I just want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you.
Ms. Quintero.
I concur with all of that has been said. And now go out, wash your hands, and, you can get some good rest now.
Ms. Hernandez.
Nothing more to add that hasn't been said. I hope you all have a good rest of your evenings, and wash your hands, and we'll hopefully see you all soon.
I have a request from the my fellow board members. If you have suggestions for improving the way we're doing these meetings with the extended the virtual board, essentially, please let me know or Mr. Holmes know what we can do to improve the process. We want to make it as good and seamless as possible. And I do thank you so much for your cooperation and working with us on this. Next item on the agenda is suggestion for future agenda items. Ms. Dong, do you have any?
No, I believe, the only thing that I'm sure is going to happen is just an update as to how things are going in a couple of weeks. How things are going as far as the curriculum, as far as the staff is concerned, and bringing us as a board anything that we can do to help you in accomplishing your goals. That's about it.
Mr. Alamil?
No, I just want to say thank you, and ditto to what Ms. Dong mentioned. I want to wish everybody a restful evening. Remember, you have to come back to work tomorrow.
Ms. Quintero?
This has been a long evening, and everybody wants to go home. So, no, I think we can just updates is all. That's good. Thank you for everything.
Ms. Hernandez?
Nothing more to add.
Is there a motion for adjournment?
I move we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Someone make the motion again, please?
I move that we adjourn.
Okay,
Okay. Sorry.
all right. We got it. Roll call.
Ms. Dawn,
Yes.
Ms. Quintero,
Aye.
Ms. Hernandez,
Aye.
Mr. Jaramillo.
Aye. Good night.
Aye.
Good night.
Motion carries. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night.